It is Nathan. Welcome to Ducks Y today. I hope everybody's doing well. I gotta blast my freaking link out to a couple places. I'm not necessarily going to be doing an open panel and all that. I also have to set up a couple stream details while we're waiting just a little bit. But yeah, feel free to say what's up in chat. And yeah. Yeah, what do I have to do here? Yeah, so I'm just gonna go send a link out in Discord, but if you want to come say hi or something, that's pretty cool. I'm gonna put the stupid lower third thing on. There we go. And I think I'm supposed to flip the thumbnail. So this is like one of the smaller downsides of like using free streaming software. Not that big of a deal, but yeah, you know, I want one day we'll have AI. One day we'll have AI where I can just make the title Capitalism versus Socialism and it'll automatically pick the image and stuff like that. I won't have to worry about a thing. Not a single thing, folks. But yeah, I wanted to do a little chat about capitalism, socialism. Where's my mug, buddy? Where's my mug? Where's my car? That's your car, right. We both drive a white Honda Civic. No offense, folks. I get confused at times. No, it's just interesting, you know? People mean different things when we say, you know, liberalism or I own a business. You know, maybe it's the case like, yeah, the government pays for my healthcare, or I didn't even think about, you know, my insurance last time I went to the doctor. Those all mean really different things when people say them. And sometimes it's just because, like, you know, your buddy Duck, you know, I like my philosophy, but people have said I'm too abstract. I think in the real world too much. And so, you know, maybe it is that, you know, I spent too much time lost in books. We're not necessarily going to be doing that though, right? But like, we might do a little bit of it. But it's like, how do you know what? Like, is Donald Trump even a capitalist at this point? You know, who knows? I know my anti-MAGA people on Ducks Y will say he's a he's a felon, is what he is. He's a criminal. Which is still very judgmental. Maybe that's just a little small capitalism symptom, right? But hey, what's up, Shakespeare? Hey, Kevin. Yo, and hello. Hope everybody's having a good day. Yeah, let's go, Rob. Quack a little bit. Yeah. Just because I am an attention-seeking person in general, I'm gonna send this stream out to a couple different Discords. But yeah, we've got some music, and I mentioned in the opening, if you guys just tuned in, might do an open conversation either beginning of the show, later, whatever. If I know you or know of you, if you're a subscriber, or if I've been on a panel or a VC or something with you, if anyone wants to come up, I'm not like kind of putting that stress out there, but you know, if anyone wants to come up and do capitalism versus socialism, so I'm not just like reading you know, freaking John what's his name, John Locke, or, you know, David Ricardo the whole time, that would be cool. But no pressure. I'm just biding my own time or something like this. What did oh, whoops, that's weird. Okay. Yeah, it's an interesting time in life, right? You know, this is like very academic or philosophical, is that you know, sometimes it's really hard and disconnected from reality to ask in the first place, like, you know, where did my camera tripod come from? What the heck? Where did this come from? And sometimes it's actually good timing. And right now we have trade wars going on. We have people worried about what the future might be like. And for the most part, life is carrying on like usual. There's a lot of robustness in society, from the bodega to your home, from the Monster Energy into your hand, into your adrenal glands, all of this good stuff. All of this good stuff. Whoops. Let's see. I am gonna send a link out to a couple of my Red Pill discords. I don't know if so. I'll keep an eye on chat. I'll make sure that people are being respectful and nice and all that stuff too. Yeah, really long wind up just to talk about like supply and demand or something. No, we'll be good. We'll go through it. We'll push through it. I'm gonna screw that guy's Discord. Blop blop blop, blada blap blat. Okay, hurry up. I don't know if anyone here's had an office job and gotten into that Control V, just like very tasky stuff. But yeah, I'm getting thrown off when I'm chatting in Discord. I'm not on the self-promotion tabs anymore. Someone can make a product, just a little desktop app that or plugin for Discord that can read self-promotion rooms, or you can tag channels that allow self-promotion, and yeah, ask people to pay 99 cents and say, hey, don't waste, you're the first 10 minutes of your stream to promote yourself in the communities that you're a part of or something. So that's one example of capitalism in action, or it would be. Okay. All right. Hey, what's up, John Smith? Hey, Shankar Steven, good to see you from India. Cool. Yeah. So, if you guys don't mind, if anyone doesn't mind liking the video, just see if we can get a little audience for this. I'm going to be talking about capitalism and socialism today, and I want to hear from you for sure. Not supposed to be like a college lecture or like a conversation or whatever, but yeah, happy to talk about a little bit about economics, philosophy, sort of social theory, political theory, this kind of stuff. Figured it'd be kind of a fun thing, but yeah, that's the big news. That which is the news is Donald Trump's tariff trade energy deals, which are, if we're being good faith to what the office of the president's supposed to be, it means that relative to Europe, relative to Japan, and relative to the United States and countries that we either support or compete with, however that works, all of these little shifting pieces should be good for the United States. This is the story or the narrative thus far. It's the story or the narrative thus far. And so if I'm not mistaken, Japan's going to basically be allowed to sell cars in the United States. And so this is like a, kind of protectionism a little bit. But it's also, there's questions which come up that sort of ask like, well, how in a capitalist or a socialist society, even if it's democratic socialism, like you don't typically see large economic deals coming from government in a way that disrupts society. You don't see the government creating artificial competition or something. That might be a distinction between like more strict socialism and capitalism. we might see that Donald Trump's trade deals are asking a lot of these like very free countries, right? Europe has their own sets of problems. They've got their own sort of style of managing things and dealing with it. But we'll see. We will see, folks. This sort of background deal, I think, is what it's supposed to be. There it is. Let's see. Hey, Sean Wynn, what's going on? We got Sean Wynn in the house. Cool. Quack quack from Robar. Yeah. And so it's interesting, one question I very rarely see people sort of answering on online debate panels, a lot of the sort of infotainment style videos, is like, how do you actually split out and understand what does a capitalist or free market advocate sound like? How do they view different either problems or opportunities in society? How do they describe the world around them? And if someone's not like deeply, if their identity, I'm not like, oh, my name's Nate. My name's Nate. I'm a really deep capitalist. In that case, it might be the case that, I just have this sort of ordinary belief that's actually like a lot of other things. And so, this is different as well because we're sort of told by the media that, collective identities, which almost by necessity support sort of a socialist system to some extent. We're sort of told that in this case, what you are is a socialist, what you are is a communist. And that's not even necessarily true. There's actually a deep economic history, historical thought, as well as representation in the political space of leaders who believe in socialist, either democratic socialism, but still really deeply accept individual identities. And you actually need those in some cases. Yeah. This music is a little vibe. It's not horrible. I'm not going to complain. Sean Wynn says an 8.8 magnitude earthquake struck Russia today. I had not heard about that. Let's look that up real quick. Let's make sure Russia is in both our thoughts as well as our prayers. And the Russian people are as well. Kamchatka Peninsula. I know Kamchatka from playing Risk online, but yeah, and it looks like there's a tsunami warning. Evacuation zones in place. Tsunami advisory issued for Washington coast as well. And so, yeah. Yeah, so there's just a little information there, but yeah, but John Locke is really one of these thinkers that creates the basis of he's the for sure the guy that really sets the tone, the philosophical tone for capitalism. Oops. And yeah, it's this idea that you're an individual created, and if you do anything to follow your sort of core human nature, something like that, Um, what you're doing is you're going out and you're creating and building property. Hey, what's up, Radical Coder? Duck, who won the debate earlier today? Destiny. Yeah, I would say Wick was the winner. He got the Destiny raid. Yeah, most likely. But yeah. So yeah, and so like John Locke would say, well, a government can't compel you to be a certain way. A government can't tell you how to be. You have to make that choice for yourself. Yeah, and the reason is because we have reason, we have natural law, we've got all these different really grandiose things, and just as you're born into the state of nature, you're born into a society, you eventually learn how to pursue opportunities, settle disputes, all this kind of stuff. And in a society, in the social and governmental context, there's nothing else there that is actually based upon that's based on collective identity. So there's a huge difference. Yeah, massive difference for sure. So yeah, and so the difference then is, if we're looking at like something like an identity and saying that, well, I'm going to vote for politicians that support free markets. When if I read a book from the store, or I buy a set of glasses or something like this, I'll put on the Buddy Duck glasses. If I put these on, one of the things I might say is that, like, well, I know someone designed these. I know someone wanted me to have glasses like this. They believed that I would want them, and so that's why they made them. And the reason they did that is they too were born into this similar society where they learned how to settle disputes, they learned how to pursue opportunities, they learned how to live according to reason, and generally be moral and charitable. And so very deeply based on human nature. Music confuses me. Is this live? Hey, what's up, Grandpa? Yeah, we are live right now. It's good to see you in chat too. I can even pop this up right there. Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah, and so that's I think that's and so these really deeply laissez-faire, not quite anarcho-capitalist views, like anarcho-capitalism can say you don't even have to explain to someone else if you wanna own a tank. You can own a tank, you can own an airplane, you can own whatever it is that you actually want to own. And yeah, it's your problem once you have it. It's not anyone else's problem, and that's basically it. Anarchy doesn't really extend into coercion for other people. And by and large, what John Locke would also say is the limits of a free market is coercion in some sense. But this tells us about the sort of kinder forms of capitalism. If you're following the story thus far, the kinder forms of capitalism occur being charitable in good faith, even if, for folks that maybe are saying, Duck's wearing the white shirt and he's talking about John Locke. This guy he's got to be a bad guy, folks. He's got to be horrible. But yeah, there's a lot of people in the United States who historically have said, yeah, you're allowed to believe in this Lockean identity of individual reason and freedom and pursuit, and you just gotta find the line when it's impacting another person. You can't coerce other people. You can't take away anyone else's right to go do that thing. And so. Hey, cool. It looks like Grandpa's saying long hair is the natural collection to the source. Never cut your hair nor beard. Been 5 years for me. Cool. Cool. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, nice long hair. Um, I haven't, it's also been about 5 years for me as well. Um, and so one of the big things that, yeah, with just long hair, it's just when I'm eating. If I'm eating a lot, I got to be careful because I know it's going to be a problem. I know eventually I'm already bumping into it a little bit that like, yeah, oh, I'm eating too much. And I got the beard. Yeah. Yeah, and so John Locke was supported by people like Adam Smith, like David Ricardo. At this time, we were seeing a lot of like sort of economic thought that was starting to ask questions about, well, not only what does it mean for me to have political rights, what does it actually mean for, this to not cause a war, or for us to understand how a society works when everybody is doing this? That was a crazy question. The British Commonwealth was pre-market. You still had feudal lords, you still had lordship, you still had some hierarchical leadership structures. It wasn't always clear, it was vague what was allowed in the realm of political competition. These were all things that were that people were sorting out as the days went on. And so, being able to say, well, this is what, John Locke believed versus this is what, someone else believed, well, yeah, it's impactful. The reason it's impactful is that, like, maybe you want to just know, like, look, I'm not competitive, not really, but I just want to know what the future is going to bring, right? If there's 1,000 of us going to do this thing, we're 1,000 of us are going to go start like mining petrified wood to make petrified wood mugs or something. Well, that's cool. Petrified wood is awesome. I definitely think that it's sick enough that it's worth whatever the cost is. And if there's no cost, if it's just opportunity, well then, is the world like this? Is everything an opportunity? Hey, what's up, Copper Bones and Bob? Good to see you again. I wanted to own a cave and a waterfall. I do now. I paid for it by giving free housing to many people. Cool. I don't know how that story ties together, but it's if I was playing the role of a capitalist, I'd be like, well, you're living with some nice people. That's the first thing I could say, Copper Bones. You got some nice people where you don't even have to, all you have to do is, it's like, yeah, I can be charitable and nice, and you guys are going to give me my own private waterfall and cave. That's gnarly. You should have kept going, though. That's the other thing I would say, is just as my former Roman Catholic spirit of charity, you should have kept going. You could have given a lot more people free housing. Maybe then you'd have a mountain. John Law built your hot rod. Cool. Yeah. I don't know who that is, but it sounds cool. Sounds dope. I mentioned this earlier too. If any like normal subscribers, folks I recognize, or folks from that I've been on panel with want to come up and talk, things are always better as a group, so feel free. Like go ahead and double tap your screen to like the video, I believe, or like the video. And yeah, if anyone wants to come up and talk about this stuff, that's also cool. We're doing capitalism versus socialism. Where's my mug? Who built this? Who are you? Of course, it must be. So all right. The government doesn't represent you. We are chattel owned by ancient bloodlines. It's bad. Sorry. Hate bearing bad news. This was, I don't know about the present moment. I would say this doesn't totally represent my experience or anything like that. But this is where Marx does come in. Marx is only one of many people that criticize, the United States and says, places like the United States, liberal governments, and says, well, what you guys are actually doing, I've got two ways to say this. The two ways I can say this is practically you're leading us off a cliff. You're telling us there's going to be a revolution. That's what my math says. That's what my calculus says, is there's going to be a revolution. You can't be this in this, if you're this guy who's going around making petrified wood into mugs, planes, trains, automobiles, all this stuff. There's no bottomless sort of opportunity. There's some scarcity. Because there's scarcity, you can play with scarcity, and all of this boils up into the rich getting richer. It's too expensive. Marx wouldn't have been caught dead at that time saying, there's environmental risks or something. It's hard to actually price things. That's how smart people think about this stuff, by the way. Not that it's not smart to say, like, well, look, I got a selfie stick here. So, if I can buy a selfie stick, I should figure out who makes these. What, if people love using these, if there's still a chance for me to go do this, what else must that be like? And, what does it actually take for me to decide that's the one I'm going to do? I can go pick up 1,000 different things at the bodega, at Goodwill, at whatever it is. And all of those are like this. They have that same story. But this is like, modern accelerationism, not getting too theoretical or anything like this. But yeah, there's people that say, well, guess what? This has a $3.49 price tag because it's used. It's from Goodwill. I love this. I use it probably 4 or 5 times a week. But you don't actually know if this is new, a $40 tripod. Is this just because people are so weirded out about our actual options for making stuff now? And don't stress out, because obviously the Earth is 10 times, it's an order of magnitude or 2 orders of magnitude larger than you think it is. But at the same time, how do you know Google is worth what Google is worth? How do you know Apple is $1 trillion company? Do they know what's going to happen in 10 years or in 15 years? What are the small changes or big changes they're seeing now? John Law is the creator of fiat currency. Go check him out if you get an opportunity. I'm actually going to talk a little bit, because I'm a hack. I was going to talk Joseph Schumpeter today. So appreciate you. Joseph Schumpeter was a really, really cool economist, like really interesting guy, political theorist, social theorist a little bit, but mostly an economist. He was at Harvard. Alan Greenspan was one of his students. And so Joseph Schumpeter was he's not like me. I just use Wikipedia a lot. But Joseph Schumpeter was, he would talk about sort of his big criticism of economics was, and I'm getting to a point here, but his yeah, definitely. Yeah, his big point of economics was like, look, you Austrian economists making charts and supply demand curves, and you government economists like guys like John Keynes, you're spending too much time in good faith, you're spending too much time in like abstract mathematical models. We can't just spend all day looking at price equilibriums and figuring out how markets seem to correspond to find an inefficiency. I'm going to do this as an economist. You're going to do this at the firm level. Your business. See ya, Grandpa. Here's a quote from Grandpa. Gotta go. Here's a movie. Quote of the day. If the human race is going to survive, we better start having babies. Let's do it, folks. All the everyone, I guess. Yeah, everyone start having babies, or don't, or we don't. Yeah, but Schumpeter talked about how the gold standard, the gold standard was how liberal nations had to sort of create value exchange. Trade had to be based on a fiat, had to be based on the gold standard. But he says, this isn't a good system because gold is itself a pretty bad economic product. It has weird effects with inflation. It's a limited supply isn't just the problem, right? But the mechanism it creates is bad. So eventually you have like gold-like exchanges between democratic nations. But the reason that is because if you're a political theorist and an economist, you'd have to say, well, how do you get the fiat currency in the first place? A little bit. How do you know what anything is worth? Isn't this necessary for foundational economics? And somebody's going to be like, well, my baby's starving. You got to help me, mister. Yeah. Well, that, my like Brad Pitt playing a Navy SEAL is like, well, that clarifies things. It's a hungry lady and a hungry baby. I got something I can do here. All right. No, but you got gold. You got gold too. Everybody really means it. Everybody really means it. Alan Greenspan was called the maestro for a reason. I'm not saying that I don't like the chat comment. I just don't know totally what it means. I don't know the reason. Yeah, Bob makes a good point there. There's 8 billion people. Good luck getting them to all agree on anything other than hunger. Yeah, that's deeply true. Deeply true, right? Yeah, hunger, old school biblical values. The Bible, I don't think the Bible talks that much about like economics in a meaningful sense. It might talk about moral questions that anyone can ask, but like, one of the reasons is that like, yeah, there's just, we didn't have calculus back then. We couldn't look at like change contingent sort of relationships between two different products. You couldn't predict or algebra, so you couldn't create a function or even describe how like the price of a selfie stick actually would relate to like a wagon wheel back in biblical times. But you could ask, well, what did the ancient Hebrews or Christians actually believe about buying and selling stuff? What are the deeper moral questions that are available? John Locke just says, no, that like, okay, this is, John Locke goes, okay, we'll do that. I promise you, I will talk about God. I will talk about nature as God made it. I will talk about how you can do good and how it is true that we don't see this. But I will say, we go onward. I will say the right to pursue property was unequivocal in my view, in his world. So I think that's funny. But how's everybody doing tonight? Thanks for tuning in. I'm showing we got 10 watching on my side. I hope I see your chat messages. I'll open YouTube real quick, just to say what's up to everyone. I don't know if hopefully I'm not missing too many people, but in terms of the chat messages and stuff, but yeah. All right, let's so that's an interesting, but anyways, this was based on Copper Bones's comment about fiat currency, is that who knows, some people, there are like very small minorities of very smart, brainy, studied people who will say, well, like, the actual relationship between gold is the moral question because of how the world works. And other people will say, well, no, you're just, if you understand how that works, I have some weird differential equation or derivations of why having a fiat currency based on an actual gold standard increases risk. And so if you're a moral thinker, you can say, I don't need to think about my mom, my dad. I don't need to think about my community. I don't even have to consider what Barack Obama or Donald Trump would say. I wouldn't worry about that stuff all that much. What I would think about a little bit more in this case is, so what I'd consider is, if we don't have a fiat standard, is society more ethical? If we don't have a gold standard, is society more ethical or moral? And so I'm a capitalist because capitalism can do that. Capitalism can decide and tell us what ethical choices must be like. what ethical choices must be like based on mathematical or statistical laws and probabilities. Yeah. And then you do get guys like the Dan O'Reillys, Daniel Kahneman. I'm sure there's a lot more. You get a lot of support from neuroscientists who say, well, just don't talk about metaphysics. If you're going to talk about what happens in the world kinetically or mechanically, if you understand that, like, I can tell McDonald's you should buy more farmland for like free grazing for cows or something. You can buy more, you can buy better stores for lithium or something like this. And it turns out it's profitable because it's also ethical. So go say that, but don't tell people that this is what the world's like, because guess what? You're a cave person. I'm a capitalist still. Don't tell me I'm not, but I have a caveman brain. I don't think rationally about stuff. If you tell me that a utility maximizing decision isn't describing what the world actually is, it itself is unpredictable. Okay, so you can't tell me when to buy a stock to become wealthy. I might just forget to buy it. I might mess it up, buy it at the wrong time. The information might just be wrong and I trust it or don't trust it. I can get those things wrong 100 times out of 100. And some people do. And so you're not talking about ethics or morality. You're talking about an abstract way of describing systems and processes. And this is just so you guys are getting some really rare economic knowledge right now. This is where Schumpeter actually sort of fell on some of this stuff. He said that, well, look, if you don't look at the history of economics, you get a wrong answer. You get guys, the analysts at Goldman Sachs talking about McDonald's or Yum brands. You get them talking about Compaq or Best Buy. You get them talking about Dell versus Microsoft or Apple or something. But you don't actually see how capitalism and innovation creates new things. And so kind of funnily, he's not a behavioral economist. He's way before neuroscience, but he says his way of solving this is saying, well, it's not neuroscience, it's not evolutionary psychology. It's history that does this. History and the passage of time is what makes economic models not just about supply and demand, not just about price equilibrium. It's not only about the things that are consistent and predictable and comfortable over that time. It is about the discomfort of realizing when those mechanisms break. The discomfort of realizing when the mechanism breaks. And so Daniel Kahneman would say, well, if you're uncomfortable because something is happening that you didn't understand, or you're uncomfortable because your brain is maybe accurately interpreting something that you consciously are misdescribing. Who knows? It could be either. Your brain is so smart that, Freud goes away, Jung goes away, but your brain is so smart that, I describe that I have this great microphone. It's going to increase my views by 17% or whatever it is. Who knows? Who can say? I'm going to get 17% more subscribers when I have the fancy shirt MV6, digital studio style microphone, the USB-C cable, 17%, folks. And this is how good I am, right? I'm so good that I can say something like this. And Daniel Kahneman says, well, no, you're talking about some way in which humans actually connect in the world, maybe. You're talking about the way we just naturally organize in a very complex process. And so that number that you gave yourself, 17%, maybe it's right. Maybe it causes anxiety. Maybe you make other choices because of this. In economics, you would make other choices. You're going to go recommend this microphone to people you like. You'll start a second channel. You'll do all this bull crap that doesn't actually matter. And the reason it is, he might say, well, who knows? Freud, that sort of Freud side is like, well, in a social situation, 7 years ago, there was a guy that you wanted to be like, or a girl you wanted to be like, a really powerful sort of together, gathering, organizing speaker. And who knows? you heard them say hello on stage, and that one hello stuck out in your brain. You have this really latent instinctual memory of this thing, you know. And then as time goes on, maybe that event isn't codifying in 2025 terms, in actual behavioral economics or neuroscience terms. There's not some like event where it's like, well, I didn't fuck my mom, so here we are. But yeah, we attribute these big rational processes just casually into a lot of more latent, what Daniel Kahneman calls system one thinking. Yeah. Both systems suck because they rely on human decisions and humans are stupid. We should let AI models run things instead. Yeah, it's not a bad idea. Our AI overlords for sure. Yeah. From Bingus Lover. Jungle indulge in nicotine. Youngle. We got the Youngle in the Youngle in the jungle for sure. Hell yeah. Ugh. Yeah, but capitalism and I could see that capitalism and socialism both suck. It's weird because both systems bring up different questions, and so maybe I'm like spending quite a bit of time considering if I save for retirement or if I buy healthier food or something like that. And it could be the case that whatever the answer is that I decide on, or if I decide to focus on something else, is just part of our evolutionary brains being a little different. And it could be also that what Daniel Kahneman calls our system 1 and system 2 brains. They themselves are good at certain things. This is always important, and I was going to get scolded by my, whatever, my college friends or something. But Daniel Kahneman doesn't tell us to blame our brains. Don't blame capitalism. That's not the conclusion. The conclusion is that our slow thinking, patient brains, when I say I'm going to patiently listen to this stupid duck guy, this Nathan duck guy who's kind of an idiot, but I'm going to listen to him for 30 seconds and then I'll decide if I want to consider it or something. He says that process is itself not exactly what you think it is. It may not ultimately produce something based on careful consideration all the way down. It's turtles all the way down. It may produce an idea based on very instinctual processing. And the other side of it is that it's still very good at, our brains are very good at deciding things. You don't have Bill Gates and Melinda Gates, right? You don't have Kamala Harris deciding she's going to come up with a presidential platform and run for president without a system 2 process and system. It's very good at that. It's a little bit very good at that. So, and system 1, on the other hand, is very good at helping us navigate, helping us quickly orient ourselves in space and time. It's very good at helping us maybe quickly compare similarities and differences and eventually decide something. Hey, what's up, DJ Emo? Capitalism was fine until they allowed corporations to have the same rights as a living human being. It was downhill from then. Cool. Yeah, that's a fair opinion. Yeah. It's interesting what would actually change again if just kind of catching you up quickly, but if you had a pair of costume glasses or a favorite coffee mug, and either as a capitalist or a socialist, you can describe what sort of identity and person put that thing in your hand. Very small example, but what actually, what in the world changes when corporations Like, I'm not saying I agree with it, but if corporations get the right to give money to politicians or something, what happens then? I had no idea. Right? What is like someone like Donald Trump actually think about that? I mean, this was a guy who always talked about supporting blue collar workers. Always talked about, let's support the working class. Let's support small business owners, folks. And then what does he do? He goes out and he shows people to get elected pictures of all of his real estate properties, golf courses, hotels, skyscrapers, residential buildings. Talks about all of this great work, all the stuff he bought and sold and redesigned. So it's like, that's not political. That's that's what we're talking about. If you're John Locke or David Ricardo, it's like, that's what you're supposed to be doing. If you're Joseph Schumpeter, you might say, well, you're a speed bump. There's going to be a big change that we'll start seeing in 50 years. It'll take 30 years for people to truly codify it. And in the 1970s and 80s, as we started thinking about information and how information is going to be communicated more efficiently, people started seeing this, and you don't get until the 90s and then 2000s, and this is, maybe 70, 80 years. It's about that time period after telephones were invented, after we really get the infrastructure for television and radio all across the United States. So you get to this 1970s period, you see it. I see it with my own eyes. I can touch it if I go to the smartest institutions on earth, maybe, whatever. And then you crash out in the 90s, hard crash out. The 2000s, hard crash out a little bit, but you start getting some really, really rich companies. You get Google eventually. You get Google right in there at some point. And Joseph Schumpeter would say, well, this is the revolution. This is the thing that goes over the top for folks. This is the thing that capitalism and supply and demand and no one else is going to predict, even though we've been sitting there talking about it, looking at it, doing it. There's no price equilibrium in the 1970s and 80s about this new company, Google, that might eventually emerge. There's no price equilibrium for old retailers that we assume will use the technology, but maybe they do and don't. There's something called creative destruction, where at some point, the way we seek and use and find and depend and trust information is going to totally change. And history tells this story. It's not, in this view, it's not John Locke. It's not John Locke saying you're born to pursue property. Okay, buddy. Okay, who gives a shit? Of course. Of course people do, but they're really looking for this moment of creative destruction. They're looking for this, we have to evolve. What is this? We have to do this or people will become unhappy with how we're doing business. Or, whatever it is. And so, Marshall McLuhan, I don't know who that is. Marshall McLuhan. I was trying to. I'm gonna put it on screen. I don't know if I've got a little trauma, not anything else, but I have a little bit of trauma. Oh, Canadian philosopher, cool. I've got trauma from people getting me to say, say Mike Hawk on stream. Say Mike Hawk, dude. TX for UX says, very cool. Economic thinking. This to me sounds like economic thinking, that the only lesson history teaches us is that history teaches us nothing. Yeah, it's crazy true, right? Yeah, it's cool. Yeah. Some people would say that for sure. You are born to procreate, so there's no other reason to be here. Everything else is noise. Yeah. Whew. That's very cavemanish. That's a little more caveman-y than like, just cut it in half, right? Get out of here, folks. Get out of here. We're shutting the stream down because somebody's disagreeing with my capitalism knowledge or information, whatever. Get out of here. No. No. Yeah, you got a society, so what else? What else is new? Yeah, Joseph Schumpeter. I forgot exactly what but he does too. I'm not going to keep saying his name because it's starting to sound funny to me a little bit. Maybe it's time to move on to Marx or whatever. Yeah, open the panel for a debate or something, whatever. But no, yeah, he talks about management culture and he talks about corporatism a lot. And he says that, like, well, this is, you probably need in entrepreneurship specifically, and at established companies, you need management culture. You got to have controls in place. You got to understand how you manage your value chain through your organization. But that corporate culture is also one of those forces that stops creative destruction. If we're going to do those 80-year arcs, versus people are fighting the good fight across this 80-year arc or whatever it is, a little bit, not that big of a deal, but culture is just one aspect of what actually helps you find where innovation comes from. And if you're doing corporate culture, it's one of those same mechanisms that actually hurts you and tells you definitively how painful and bad the future is going to be for your firm. It's going to be horrible. It's going to start feeling the same as if there's government regulation. Boo government regulation, says most free market capitalists. Yeah, and this is another big difference, is that John Maynard Keynes, David Ricardo, all these traditional economics, Alan Greenspan, all these guys would say, well, with regulation, with government regulation, you're not going to be operating within efficiently. You're not going to be able to find the optimal product at, in either an inefficient price that you can get it at a good value at, or find price equilibrium to make your model work. Make your model work. Meh. So, yeah. And that's probably true a little bit. It's probably actually a little bit true if you've got sort of unnatural means of seeking information. But it's also more true that, if it's the case that if there's any constraints on how you seek and access information about pricing and about demand and about, just where the markets are, aggregate, where are economics in general, not just the abstractions, but in the real world, where are all of these abstractions operating? Well, then you lose. And economists, again, say, bleh. Hey, what's up, Connor Vanderright? Good to see you. You got the Steelers and all this stuff. Cool. To disagree is to conversate. We all have our opinions and shared resonances along the way. If we cannot discuss these things, then caveman comes soon. Hell yeah. Yeah, it's very cool. Oh, you consult your dreams. I had to run gassers in football today. It sucked. Gassed out, bro. It's gassed out. That is gassed out. That's gassed out. Well, I hope you're okay. I hope you are all right. Yeah. But that's basically it, and so it's interesting to see that, this says really different things about how we think about ourselves and how we think about other people and stuff too. So, Joseph Schumpeter, this guy talking about Google coming after 80 years of some bullshit or whatever, he would tell us that humans have to be sort of innovative and creative. We naturally have to seek these very pro-social, innovative sort of organizational structures. Otherwise, we wouldn't see capitalism. We wouldn't see these patterns of economics changing over, 10 years versus 30 versus 50 versus 80 or whatever it is. You wouldn't see these very stark differences in what's happening if people don't naturally organize and produce things around an organization in certain ways. And John Locke says, I don't need any of that. They're both free market capitalists to a large extent. really deeply. I think more on the more deeper sense. You know, even though Schumpeter, he has a book called Capitalism, Democracy, and Socialism, or something. Democracy, Capitalism, and Socialism. This is that sort of social political theory stuff. But he says, yeah, humans are creative versus, well, naturally we're rational, we're peaceful, and we just go pursue our own interest as God ordained. We do so somewhat ethically most of the time, in congruence with what natural law is, and that's by and large how 90% of people are. By and large, how 90% of people are is they're peaceful. You don't need more from just what social organization is. It's just social organization. I might not even talk about it that much if I'm on that side of the political fence. But what I will do at some point is, whatever. James Drummond asks, democracy? Hell yeah. Yeah, just democracy, not in like a crazy sense or anything like that, but like in a normal sense where, in a normal sense where people decide what they're going to make and how they're going to make it. And in economics, there's at least this sort of underpinning, which is very important, that we're at least informed, there's transparency, and probably people have decision power to figure out what information influences that economic system, what cultural or economic or informational or economic forces influence just people naturally organizing. And so there's maybe a big disagreement about this, and political theorists will say, well, if you're starting with democracy, boom. And yeah, natural law from John Locke. Should we look up natural law again? Natural law, my dude. Natural law is a philosophical and legal theory positing the existence of universal moral principles inherent to nature and discoverable through reason. Derived from natural nature and divine law. Yeah. So very old, outdated idea, right? Like maybe it's actually accurate in some sense that like if you're a human being, right, just like bonobos display empathy as well as competition, you can be either a violent or a very peaceful, altruistic monkey if you're a bonobo, or whatever. And so, yeah, modern academics might add on to it, but just as like a fair shot idea for natural law, if you're trying to consider what it means, the fair shot of discovering what natural law is isn't that it's a total piece of shit that isn't worth anything. It is. It's a description that, well, can society be sort of almost wrapped, or can there be a drape or a blanket around it? Why? It's just the case you're always going to pursue property, settle disputes peacefully when you can't do otherwise, and you're even going to do this in that society, no matter how upset you are. So who knows? Maybe it undermines natural law theory to say, well, we do have the presence of violent people like mass shooters and stuff like that. There is violence that appears unexplained if we were living in this natural law universe. Can't we account for the fact that not only do societies go to war, but sometimes within a society we see cops go to war with Rodney King, or we do see black on black violence. It's a social phenomenon, right? It's a social phenomenon that has some underlying reality to it. So natural law is God's ways, sort of. Yeah. You got to get God out of there a little bit, right? Because do you always need God to describe natural law in nature? Like natural religion says, no, you just go to nature and you go to nature to find God. And that's like Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who doesn't advocate for a specific economic system specifically, but he encourages us to think in terms of positive freedom, which implies something sort of like the US has had in small ways, and something like Europe is in a lot of ways. Yeah, so with Jean-Jacques Rousseau, you know, if I think about positive, I'm not constrained, right? I got no strings because I da 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 da. I got no strings to hold me back. I got no strings on me. For those that know, for my fans in New York and O'Reilly, you ain't a patriot. You ain't nothing but a motherfucking racist bitch. A little Immortal Technique fam. Gang gang. No. I'm just fucking around a little bit, but yeah. Where do we go? Oh, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, a little bit. Yeah, he tells us that the fundamental human nature, the most important part of everything, the only thing that really matters at all, is that, like, yeah, once you get to a society, you're not going to have someone tell you, like John Locke does, that, oh, you're not allowed to think about freedom in terms of what you're actually able to do. You only think about freedom in the sense that you're able to go pursue. You do start getting some of those like Hamilton-esque rhymes in there. Yeah. Oh, if my family's safe, can I bake a cake? It's my daughter's birthday. She's turning 8. If I can't bake a cake, maybe something else. We can walk in the park, put a book on the shelf. At least what I'm worried about, I'm dad, is when she's 12. I hope that she knows that our virtues and education were held. It's such a ruthless plan. I'm a turn her into Stan. She's gonna stock up from a supplier on Glad Wrap and open up a restaurant. Bland. Duck, can you take the chat off your display? It makes it hard to read the chat as we are typing and reading. I like the chat there, Bob. Is it bad? I'm trying to draw folks in, tell them we have audience engagement. I want that aesthetic signaling. But yeah, generally, so yeah, if you guys just want to vote on this, and then I'll decide if I'm not going to take the chat off the display or if I'm going to, why. But if you guys want to just tell me your thoughts or ideas, if you guys don't like the chat on the screen, hit 1 or 2 or whatever. And then if you do like it up there, hit 2. Hit 2. If I don't see anything, I appreciate Bob being here, of course. We can't read crap with the chat display there. What do you mean you can't read crap? I don't understand how that works on YouTube. I'm getting super confused now about, well, why are we watching this stream in the first place? F. I don't know what it was. I don't know. Yeah, so this was the purpose. Yeah, the purpose was just to kind of show people that I was gonna, yeah, is that, yeah, none of us are so attached to our own, like, I want, yeah, if you guys feel an idea you want to share is important or purposeful, that's really cool, but none of us are ourselves that attached to, like, this one thing I say, right? If that makes sense. You guys are free to chat, or if you guys don't like seeing yourselves on screen, if you're uncomfortable with that, like, that's to me a little more important, I would imagine. That's because, like, yeah, I don't want someone to feel uncomfortable just watching a stream or wanting to say something and be like, oh, well, now other people will read my comment. That would be horrible, right? That would be horrible. So, but yeah. Yeah, maybe I just crashed out, right? I'm not a PhD, so I don't have enough knowledge. And so instead of actually closing the stream, I put the chat up because I wanted you guys to tell me capitalism versus socialism stuff, and then I do whatever I can do with it. Keep chat pucks. Hello, YouTube. What's up, YouTube? Good to see y'all. Bingus lover. Yeah, and so Jean-Jacques Rousseau talks about what almost like it allows for socialist society where people say, well, yeah, democratic freedom, what democratic freedom is. See, that's dope to me. Okay, so democratic freedom. Democratic freedom is this idea that I can say that being able to go to the library is freedom. It can also be the case I disagree with this. I disagree that we should be spending our money on books right now, or stupid books. We don't have to buy books or any books, whatever, at all. So Ohio. Yeah, and so this is different, where what's his dummy face says something like, whatever. John Locke says, yeah, you got natural law, we'll figure it out. It's not dummy face, but, he tells people that their opinion about having opinions about society precludes their ability to have other opinions about society because they naturally stop other people's opinions about society. Where Rousseau says that, well, your opinion about society is just your opinion about society. And if that's a society is running into other things you have opinions on, well, then that can or doesn't have to be your opinion about society, and people can or don't have to understand it, but to be legitimate, they have to understand the general thrust of what you said. And that's the general will. It's idealized. You don't necessarily get to have the voice heard out loud and all this other stuff, but if it's not the case that I can't somehow generally capture a complex statement or word that you say, then in reality, what are we actually talking about? What's the point? I don't speak for the tribe when I say this. I don't speak for the tribe when I say this. I always discover new stuff about, like, these are some of my favorite thinkers and ideas. I always discover new stuff when I talk about this, so I'm being a little selfish right now, but yeah, I appreciate all of you guys. I appreciate you guys quite a bit. Quite a bit. I'm gonna slide my mic over just a little bit, and that's cool. Yeah. Very nice. Very nice. If there's any engineers in the house, I have this. I'm using a fold-out table. I don't know if it can hold the weight of a MacBook. It's not a MacBook. It's a Chromebook and a microphone on 720p. But yeah, I just noticed my table's got this sort of like rough surface to it, which is pretty sick. I appreciate that quite a bit. I made a smooth table. You should have seen what we had. We had all of the things in the house that we could possibly have, and they were all rough. They all had a spackled surface to them. Are you not pleased? I am once again asking for your support. Hey, what up? We got Steelman in the house. Hey, Steelman, did you want to come up? If you're just hanging out, cool, but good to see you. We were just talking earlier. Give me one sec. I'll be right back. I'll drop the link in a sec if anyone wants to come up too. Oh my gosh. So we got like maybe like 1/10 of the way through Capitalism, but I think that those are my two most important ideas. 2 or 3 most important ideas is that, yeah, and just because I don't know if anyone's actually gonna come up, I'm gonna go ahead and drop the link now. And yeah, what was I doing? And if no one comes up, I'll just keep talking about, I'll go into some socialism. But the 2 biggest ideas I think in capitalism is, well, people look at opportunities in their day-to-day life. We look at what else is like that same opportunity, what makes them different. How much do you believe, or how passionate are you about pursuing that opportunity? And does it make sense? Does it make sense? Right? Is it all about just the money? If it is, isn't that kind of messed up? I don't know. But yeah, it's either because you're kind of born this way, you're born creative, you're born innovative, you're born to pursue opportunities, or you're born to associate a big part, an important part of your freedom in our ability to view positive and negative freedom, whether society gives you that or you get that yourself. Either way, for capitalism, the most important thing is that an individual is deciding how their skills are used, maybe not how they're valued. You know, you know, the sort of value creation might always be the sort of social or collected market, a market based sort of exchange based information and pattern cause based thing. Um, but yeah, because of our freedom, because of our evolutionary brains and all this stuff, we see this as the way to solve for sort of irrationality in society, um, in one small sense. Um, where we at, y'all? Sorry, I know this. The panel link doesn't always work for everybody. Some people have said they have issues with Restream Studio. So I went and hit the pin. If you guys are watching on a mobile, if you guys don't mind double tapping to like the stream, yeah, I don't know. It's always helpful if there are people that might come up and spend some time. It's nice to bring a little audience, give us the chance to fail, give us the chance to succeed and figure out what we didn't say in the past. But that's basically, to me, that's sort of the political, social, economic theory of capitalism. You know. Let's see here. Let's see. Oh shoot.
All right.
What up, Steelman?
Working. What up? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for being up here.
Yeah, cool. Said I'd join in and kind of listen along and maybe have a little input or something.
Yeah, cool. So just I'm happy to go back into Marxism stuff. Do you want to? Because you and I have spent some time on online panels. We've done some debates and stuff, kind of around each other. Do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, Steelman here. Most people know me as the mushroom guy, kind of like, but that's because I preach the gospel of Jesus Christ, which is the magic sacred mushroom. That's pretty much me in a nutshell, right?
Yeah, and
No,
you're a vegan too, right? You're a vegan as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So, actually, through my mushroom experiences, I've picked up a lot of things that are, for my spiritual growth, like being a vegetarian. And, I've sold my guns. I'm basically a pacifist. Like maybe, well, I heard you say you were going to get a haircut the other day, but I don't cut my hair. It looks like you don't either. But that actually goes into, Samson and Samuel, and it's the Nazarite. I mean, that's how I ended up like this, right? Is sort of the vow that was sort of bestowed to me, through my communications with God by use of the sacrament, right?
Cool.
Yeah, that's why I haven't cut my hair in probably 10, 20 years. And, it's all because of just like Samuel, or just like any Nazarite, it's not an intentional thing, but it's just a display of our devotion to the Creator.
Cool. Very
Yeah.
cool. Nice.
Yeah. I actually, I wrote the book on the origins of religion and whatnot. I've been studying this stuff for like 20 years or whatever, but now I've been on this online kind of debate stuff for like only a couple months, maybe like the last year at most, just kind of watching it. And like, I think that there's a lot of information that needs to be challenged, like the whole Orthodox thing.
Yeah. So how do you? Can I ask? Because like I hate being bigoted or sounding bigoted, but I always feel like it's like bordering on like abusing people whenever I'm on an Orthodox sort of conversation or panel.
What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, it just seems like the whole point of the
Oh,
conversation is like, well, you're from someplace else, you believe something different, therefore you're not as good as I am or as we are or whatever.
oh, with the Orthodox thing.
Yeah, that's it. Just I'm not trying to start like
Yeah.
a
Well,
huge
no, it's
scandal
funny
or
because I
anything,
mean,
but
well, go ahead because in my opinion, it needs to be done. I was actually so I was talking to ChatGPT, recently, and kind of going over my worldview with it and seeing what it thought of that, and because I have a pretty solid, very wide, detailed
yeah,
worldview that is all basically entheogenic, spiritual, sacrament, like mushroom based, right? And then I started discussing. I was like, well, how would Andrew, how does this, you know, uh, how would Andrew Wilson, how would I debate with Andrew Wilson? Right? How would that go? And it broke
yeah,
it down, and it says, well, here's Andrew, here's he knows who Andrew Wilson is, and it's able to pull up his information, and it talks about the places
yeah.
that he tries to hide and shit, like, and it talks about how there are certain areas that he hides behind. It's his foundation that allows him to win. There's these certain like foundational beliefs that allow him to win, which nobody else has been challenging, which I could clearly challenge. Um, and they need to be challenged. But where I was going with this is ChatGPT even says the Orthodox bros or whatever, that wasn't calling it that, but they're actually there to win a debate. They're there. They're not there in good faith. They're not there to help people. They're not there to enlighten people. It's literally the ego driven. We're here to win the debate by any means necessary. We don't care if we have to mock you, ad hom you, um, you know, basically go against our own logic by saying, "Oh, we're so logical, and yet we believe all this illogical foundations." You know, oh yeah, we believe in the Bible, and that's all concrete. We believe that the Council of Nicaea is God Himself that wrote it all in scriptures during Nicaea, and that everything that the Bible Nicaea said is true, and everything outside of the official doctrine is a lie. And
That's very narrowing, is it? Yeah, it's very narrowing, right? Like it's it's one of these things where it's like if I want to use the same sort of epistemology or same general the way I am Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sunday to approach the question of God, it's like why do I have to or spirituality or religion, however I start that. It's like, well, where do I actually why am I only looking at this one sort of text? Why am I not looking at contemporary evidence or reasons to think a certain way about it? Stuff bothers me to no end.
yeah, and it reminds me of an MLM, like a multi-level marketing thing, because yeah,
Yeah,
because what it ultimately is, and how it works is, um, well, first of all, like you're saying, they won't let you search the other scriptures, or it's like heresy to them. And what's disgusting to me is that they'll sit here and call me a heretic and say I'm possessed by demons and all this stuff, and they'll like literally want to kill me, and they used to literally kill people for heresy, and they
Lord.
think that's okay. When they're the actual heretics. And that's what's so disgusting about it is the Gnostics, the true teachings of Jesus, the true people who have who have like the Essene and whatnot, who have actually dealt with on a personal level with God and their own spirituality, are the ones who are not the heretics, right? And then these people are coming in saying, look, you have to listen to us or we're going to literally burn you at the stake. And then this guy is the only guy who knows. You can't,
Yeah,
yeah, he's got all the connection with God. The preacher, their divine lineage is the only way you can communicate with God. The
yeah.
fact that, yeah,
So how? Yeah, I mean, it's just interesting. One of the things I've noticed with those debates is they always use buzzwords because and I don't know if this is a because, but in that sort of debate space, people they don't want to actually engage in tangible examples and what evidence in society actually looks like, what evidence or reasons to believe things. And yeah, James Drummond says Catholics in the chat. I'm a former Roman Catholic, and so it's like, yeah, I can share my own intrapersonal experience and language about something, but it's also true that if I know that my opinion isn't that reliable, I can also say, well, look, the Catholic Church has had sex abuse scandals. There were Everybody knows that. Obviously, the Catholic Church has had indulgences. And nobody's perfect. In any religion, you can go and find malfeasance in the clergy, like clockwork. You can find malfeasance anywhere. And so it's like, well, if we're talking about religion, maybe I don't need to break down all of my own beliefs, but I do want to break down to some extent a little bit of the I don't know if it's this is hitting you the right way or wrong way, but break down some of the irrationality and find some clarity for the audience too. Like if we're doing an online debate, let's remove some of the vagary.
Yeah. Well, and I want to. Sorry, I was stuck on that thing about how this is no accident. Yeah, you could say, well, a few preachers or something like that were the fly in the ointment. Let's get to the reality of it. The most advanced, largest, like the most intricate torture chambers on the planet are
Yeah.
located underneath Catholic churches. This is not something. This was a systemic thing where they were literally torturing people to death that didn't believe, literally blindly just follow along, have the faith, meaning don't question us because we're we're the state basically, or whatever the structure,
Oh,
whatever they
word.
call it,
Yeah.
the institution,
Yeah.
right? They were, and I mean, they're promoting. And then what's disgusting to me about it, I was thinking today how dangerous this guy really is. This Wilson guy is literally saying, basically, he's saying, let's go back to the Inquisitions. Let's go back to the torture chambers and the killings of heretics. That's what he wants. You hear him, what he's saying? He's saying, let's use force again, like we used to stop anyone who fucking disagrees with us. And then they have the nerve to call me the Antichrist or evil or whatever, right? And I'm sitting here saying,
Yeah.
like we're saying, let people believe what they want, let people kind of let live and let live type thing. For the most part,
Yeah.
we're not saying
That
look.
is that's a I don't know if you know Jack Talcott, but yeah, Jack Talcott, he's a life coach. He's a Christian. I like Jack. We don't agree about anything, but his slogan is live without fear. And part of his sort of approach is that, like, well, if you are a Christian mystic or something, like, I don't know, Jack might debate you or he might not, but he might also say that, well, you know God speaks to people directly, versus um and so that, it's interesting to me, that plays into some of the fundamental stuff about how humans approach religion in the first place. And it
Well,
also plays into the ways that we leverage and use religion in our life to escape violence, to escape perceiving death, and to escape and as a way to solve moral questions, like not being a bully or abusive, like all of those things.
yeah. So, gosh, I wish I could remember that thing I was. Oh, so yeah. So you're talking about like personal experience, and God is able to communicate with people individually. And what I find interesting
Yeah.
about that is that, right, and I believe that, and I've had personal communion with God through the sacrament. But regardless, right. So, but if I tell an ortho bro this is what's crazy to me. They'll say, "Well, your personal experience is subjective. You say you had it. I say you didn't," and then they come up with this shit. They're like, "Well, God told me that you didn't have that." Well, first of all, no, that's just a lie. That's just bad faith. I'm being honest. You're not, and you're using your lie to try to discredit my truth, which is stupid. But let's just say I take them on that face value. They're saying, well, we can't believe you because you said God told you, and we have no way to verify that. And I'm saying, then don't believe Moses. Then don't believe all the people in the Bible who God spoke to. Because they want to say, well, God can't speak to you, but he can only speak to the people in the Bible, and then only the preacher can interpret it and tell us, and that's it. And you see what a closed-minded worldview that is? I'm like, they think they have the logical upper ground. It's so bad. I can't believe no one's fucking called them out on this shit yet. I mean, they're sitting there telling me they're calling me a druggie and shit. Like they want to immediately resort to. Oh,
I'm
sorry, it
still
is muted.
listening, by the way, keep talking.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, they want to immediately resort to as soon as they get cornered or whatever, they want to immediately resort to ad homs, name calling, and they'll be like, oh, it sounds like you're a narcissist because you believe that God has talked to you, but he hasn't talked to me. It sounds like you have an inflated ego. It sounds like the drugs are making you crazy and all this stuff, right? And I'm saying, then tell that to Moses, tell that to Isaiah and all these people who had visions of God and who spoke to the burning bush and all this stuff. You don't have to believe me, but then don't believe your shit any more than you believe me. And they're using that as their logical foundation. They're so logical that they believe Moses spoke to the burning bush. But if you tell them, well, you spoke to the burning bush, well, you're full of shit.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. I would say that I would accuse the problem being that if as an atheist, if you're having a theological argument that's not actually about theology, it's about winning, you're not actually having a theological conversation. And the problem is that when people are dishonest and they say, "Well, we just want to have a fun conversation, but we're going to act like it's a real conversation." Well, that's not a conversation then, right? A conversation is where I say something I authentically believe or I'm curious or unsure about. Um, and yeah, and then someone would respond to that point or say I don't totally understand and ask a clarifying question. Bob's asking if you can see. You should be able to see the chat on the screen, but um, I don't know if you can see the.
Well, I think on this like platform stream restream, the chat
Yeah,
comes in with a delay for some reason or something. Is that right?
it's
Um,
pretty good. I like
Let me
it.
try to
I
get a.
don't know.
So I just can't read
Yeah, read.
the. I don't know what was the comment, or maybe I got to scroll down here or something. Let me see
Yeah,
here.
it is. The
Sorry, I
comment
was just.
is. The comment is. What's it called?
Oh, good job, Sonny.
Yeah,
Music
the
stream.
he says when they do that, they are blaspheming the Holy Spirit, not you. Yeah,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. It, yeah, I know it's tough. So I mean, there's all these passages in the Bible that talk about, like only with those with ears can see, and only with those, with eyes or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Eyes can see, and it talks about like, I mean, the whole Bible is about this. The Pharisees and the Sadducees were going around doing the same thing, and these guys just don't see it. They want to literally preach you the letter of the law and say that's the law. They have no idea what Jesus Christ actually preached or what he actually meant or what it actually means to be a Christian. And that's what I've been noticing. I mean, it's crazy about this. I'm surprised at how many people talk about Christianity on the panel versus full of religious talk, and yet not one person on here except maybe you. The only reason I say that is because, um, like maybe actually you, I don't know, but would give your shirt off give their shirt off their back for somebody that asked for it.
yeah. So
Right?
why?
That's how
So
superficial.
yeah, yeah, and that's a other people on like Tacos channel, Breakfast Tacos. Sometimes he's modding, not very often, but sometimes it's like his channel is like, well, why would you be a Christian then if this isn't it's not about your personal belief, but this is what Christianity produces. Isn't that what's wrong with Christianity in the first place? It's that Christianity doesn't answer questions like should you be capitalist or socialist. Christianity answers questions like how do I get the most of whatever it is for myself in the first place, and then say God allows me to do that.
Okay, now let's meet here. Okay, I'm glad we found this ground. So this is kind of where our waters separate, right? So you're kind of
Yeah.
against Christianity,
Yep.
and I get why, but what I wanted to point out, I think I may have said it in the chat or something, I don't know, but is that most Christians are not really Christian. Most people that claim to be Christian, in fact, I would say over 99% of people that claim to be Christian are actually anti-Christ and misrepresenting Christianity, which is, I think, why you're taking it that way. So what I mean by this is that I think Christianity, well, and it can basically be proven scholarly, but um, it has its roots in much more than just the Christianity that the Bible is, right? So like the Greeks had their ambrosia and nectar secret societies where they would have their rituals where they would take the drink and eat the psychedelic substance and have like spiritual experiences. And even in ancient Egypt, they had these secret rites where they would eat eat a bread, probably in some sort of ergot, like infested, like LSD bread, with some sort of uh, wine concoction or whatever. But these were like psychedelic bread and wine Eucharists that were going on before Christianity. It was going on in ancient Egypt. It was probably
Yep.
going on before that. Yeah, it was going on in Greece, and then
Hey, what's
Christianity
up,
was like
Ben?
right there on
Sorry,
the
one
border.
second. Sorry, what's up, Ben? Good to see you in chat. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, that's
Sorry.
cool. But I'm just saying that Christianity did not just arise in isolation out of nowhere. It is not a standalone religion by any means. And that's the problem, that people take it as a standalone religion, these so-called fake Christians, and they
Yeah.
don't understand what it is. Yeah. And they have no concern for the real Eucharist or
But
anything like that.
it's so I appreciate it a lot, and so like when I look at like religious leaders that I find enviable, I find that they're I talk to a whatever, like I think it's cool when we see a gay priest or preacher who broke off of Catholicism or evangelical Christianity because they're like, well, this isn't actually my values, these aren't Christian values, and so therefore they're not my values or whatever it is. however you get there. Like, I think that's cool. But I also have that big problem where it's like, well, if I actually look and say it's not just people who took LSD mushrooms, it's not just people who had that spiritual experience, but they had to come from a very violent tradition. They had to have a social clash. Like, actual early Christians were these people that were unhappy with Rome and the Roman Empire and everything, the bureaucracy. And so you have people with an agenda that are actually the ones that we're talking about. And so um it's, I sort of understand some of your what you're saying. I personally can't get out of this sort of mindset that it's like, well, there, it's actually a little messier than people make it out to be most of the time.
Yeah. So, well, I get on that what you're saying there. I think that these earlier Christians against the establishment is actually the same thing that's going on right now. So, like, I would consider myself to be one of the earlier Christians, what they practice, like in a scene
Yeah.
or something like that, right? And the ortho bros are actually the institution that the Christians are actually rebelling against. It's the same situation. If Christ were to come back right now, he would totally say the same thing about the ortho church and all that shit that he said about the Jewish temples. So what I mean is that earlier the earth it's been twisted. They always try to take the occultic knowledge and they whitewash it and they feed it to the public as an institutionalized thing that they can control and manipulate the masses with. What I'm trying to reiterate here is that don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, because that's what they'll have you do. They make Christianity look so bad, but
Yeah.
in reality, if Christ was here, he would say, "He without sin cast the first stone." I mean, these guys want to kill people and all that stuff. You know what I'm saying? That was nothing to do with what Jesus was talking about. It was that's totally antichrist. And he was all about forgiveness and basically a pacifist, from what I could tell. You know what I mean? For the most part, from what I could tell.
That
And
seems like the only, like, the most to me, that seems like the most redeeming fact of the gospel is that Jesus was a pacifist.
oh yeah, and they'll argue that he wasn't. In fact, I was just on a debate panel, and not mean to drop any names, Beth and others, but she's sitting here arguing, and Beth, she knows me, so there's no problem. But the thing is,
I know Beth. I know Beth. I consider
yeah,
Beth one of my friends from that side of things.
exactly. That's why I'm not really dogging her, but I am going to throw you under the bus Beth, which is that she's arguing for that Jesus was pro death penalty. I mean, these people actually are thinking this, and I'm like, dude, you guys are so far from fucking Christianity. Like I tell them, you wouldn't know Christ if he smacked you in the face, and I'm telling you, these guys wouldn't. So don't think for a second that they know what Christianity is, because they're actually
Yeah.
antichrist.
Yeah. So yeah, yeah. Yeah, and it's weird too, because it's like I don't want to be a person that spends my time, whether I'm debating someone who's evangelical or orthodox. uh like, it would be dishonest for me to say I need to prove that your violent beliefs about Christianity also account for violence in the Christian social stratum and stuff like this. But it's like, those are the types of arguments you're asking me to respond to. So how can we actually make progress? How can we actually have a conversation if we can't get past the fact that, well, if the gospel and if Jesus was a pacifist, well, that is what the table is set with. There's nothing else that you and I can have here. Uh, you don't get to introduce violence back into the way that you think the world is, because it's useful, because it's convenient, because it's helpful, because somehow, at some point in time, you changed your mind about this kind of stuff.
Right? Yeah, man, I totally agree with that. Um, and then so I don't know if you've heard my spiel or whatever, but on mushrooms
Yeah.
being the Eucharist. So I mean, I'm like, you can call me a firm believer, but I'm actually much more than that. I would say I know that that's true, but I'll just leave it at a firm believer. I mean, this is a really important thing, that I cannot stress enough. And it's funny because it's one of those things where, like, the more you talk about it, the more it kind of um, people get used to it, and it becomes something that they brush off. Right? They don't understand the reality and the depth of what I'm actually trying to communicate, which is that if you eat these sacrament, knowing that it's the body of Christ, you can have a religious experience and actually be possessed by Christ, actually communicate with God, actually speak your mouth can actually become the mouth of God. God can actually use you as a vessel to speak, just
Sure.
like He's done in the Bible. Yeah, this is the reason I stress this is because the mystery of the mystery schools, the secret of the Illuminati, I'm revealing the secret, right? And the only way to actually experience it and to know and to become a Gnostic in that sense, like you said, maybe other people will actually have personal experiences with God and whatnot. But this is such an important thing, is that if people actually realize that the sacrament is real and that it's obtainable and that it's a real thing, this is what gets me. It's not a joke. It's not a fiction. It's not a book, like a riddle, or I mean, like a piece of bread or a metaphor. And the reason I'm pointing this out is because the Orthodox Church is so missing this, and the Catholic churches too. This is why the Catholics have their Sunday Mass. If the Catholics instituted the true sacrament of Jesus Christ, the world could change overnight. You know, and I think that yeah.
I mean, I believe you. I believe you, but that to me, that's a really uncomfortable conversation because that drifts into the political and it drifts into, well, this is also saying that anyone who's not Christian, their beliefs are now not valid. And so, what does it actually look like what would it look like to have reform in the Christian or Catholic or mystic sort of Christian tradition? What would it look like to have reform in the Orthodox tradition or religion or whatever it is? Does it tell someone like me who thinks I work hard, thinks I work to develop an opinion, thinks there can be consequential, that I'm still allowed to have that opinion? Or is it another attempt to force me to justify dumb arguments that I didn't want to dumb make in the dumb first place?
No, I get what you're saying. Okay, so let me touch on that then. I think so. They'll tell me, well, you have to have an objective experience, and if you're only relying on yourself, to your own gnosis to know things, then you're
Yeah.
wrong. This is what they're saying. They're saying you have to rely on the preacher or a book or something outside of yourself, right? And that's
Right.
kind of what you're touching on. You're saying, well, how do we know that they're telling the truth again? And what I'm getting at is, I think that for the individual, the only way to actually obtain truth is to know for yourself. Um, so what I mean is, we can each have different opinions, but I guess I'm trying to bridge that gap where I'm saying there are certain things that I know for me, like killing an animal is wrong. Killing an animal for pleasure is wrong. Um, you know, Killing an animal for pleasure, and by that I mean like for the luxury of eating meat when you don't need it, that's wrong. And now somebody can argue with me and tell all day long until they're blue in the face to try to convince me that it's right, but they're never going to because of the experience I had, right? So how do we, like you're saying, bridge that gap
Oh,
between
right.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's hard because for me it's not like I don't if I already don't believe that there is some political or social truth, it's hidden somewhere in the Quran or the Bible. I don't think that is ever going to get bridged. Um and so like that would be my political starting opinion is that, well, there's a reason there's a reason we're a secular democracy, is because there isn't a way to somehow extract the political meaning or truth in the Bible. There's nothing people democratically want. If you allow people to deliberate about old ideas, they will say, where are the new ideas, where are the good ideas? like like you can still go to church on Sunday. We actually subsidize churches, they're tax exempt. But it's also true that um that religion, if we look at the majority of political issues, there's only these weird French social issues where even democratically people want religion back in society, like writ large.
yeah, huh? Yeah, that's interesting. Well, I mean, yeah. See, I wish people would just study into how, like, for example, the flood story. It's been
But wait,
told in
wait,
like,
1 second, 1 second. So this is also to me, it's an example of where political dialogue has broken down, because what typically happens, in my view and in my experience, is that if it's the case that there is a sort of clean slate to have a conversation about what happens in politics, people drift towards more modern ways of thinking because they're more effective. It's like we didn't waste the last however many years of our time studying neuroscience or discovering scientific truths or placing religion and spirituality in the human self in order to go back to old, bad, worse ideas. And so, if it's actually the case that there's a conversation that happens, why is it even in the first place that enough people want to democratically engage with religion? I don't also understand why that would be the case. Does that I don't know if you're picking up any of the things I'm saying here or what I'm trying to get across.
Yeah, are you saying you're wondering why? That's kind of what I was thinking. Like, I was actually debating this with JS last week about whether or not we should have theology in politics, and I was kind of making, I think, the point that you're saying, which is that we actually have, through the Enlightenment and all that stuff, actually come out of having theology in politics, which is a better thing because then you have,
Yeah.
somebody who's, yeah, interpreting the Bible, misinterpreting the Bible, and then using that to justify force. And then it's like, and whose theology are we going to go by? Why just the
But
Christian
that has
Bible?
nothing to do with politics,
Right. And that's
from
why I
my
say
opinion. From my
ideology.
opinion. From
Right.
my
And they're
opinion, that is, yeah. But if you okay, so you're what you're asking me to consider is then that, well, there would be principles about politics from Christian theology that we could consider.
Well, that's kind of what he was saying, but I was saying then they should bring in their ideology and leave out their theology. They can have their theology at home, but when they come to the political table, just bring the ideology that their
Yeah, that's
religion
cool.
gave them.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah.
But yeah.
It's hard though. This is Jean Jacques Rousseau and all this stuff. Yeah, yeah. Jean Jacques Rousseau and a bunch of other political thinkers, economic thinkers. Um, kind of have suggested that, well, what people actually, even an atheist, what they based, or a secular, someone who supports a secular society, what they still base their foundation on is very complex question. What is society? Very complex question. What's best for myself or my family? Um, and so, religion, even if religion is true, even if it's the Christian religion or some other Abrahamic natural religion, it still has to get across that barrier where you're able to say that, well, once you think about complexity or hard things in society, and once you think of what's difficult or best for your family, and where opportunities, um, how you describe sort of the ordinary happenstance and some of the absurdity or tragedy or hope that you see in society. um, Christianity still has to push past or over or underneath that. It's very difficult to go around it because it's a very, very foundational, almost like evolutionary belief that we have.
Okay. Yeah, I think I get what you're saying. You're saying like a true Christian is going to rebel against an institutionalized state structure automatically. I think is kind of what you're getting at. The heart of Christianity is rebellion against institution.
um,
The true Christianity. But to get back on what you're, so though
yeah,
you're, is this kind of, yeah, exactly. And so you can't have where I'm like touch. Yeah, you can't necessarily, capitalism and Christianity aren't necessarily coherent or whatever, right? They don't work together because if you're a real Christian, then you're not going to be a prophet. To me, is basically the same thing as, it's when they lend money
yeah,
on interest, and that they're not supposed to lend money on interest, right? Because that's like a sin because you're, you know, and
yep,
I'm saying
yep.
that's what, yeah, capitalism is the same thing. It's literally exploiting your fellow man for gain, which is totally antichrist. What we should be doing is working together to help each other. And I don't know, I didn't catch where you stand on this, uh, on socialism, capitalism stuff, but I have a feeling that you're
Yeah.
probably not pro capitalism.
Well, let's that no, I think that's awesome. Yeah. I'd love to actually get your take. I am a little more liberal, so maybe we have stuff we'll disagree about or talk on. But we can, because we covered capitalism for folks that are just joining. And shout out to Aaron Williamson's Deciz 60, uh, and yeah. Oh, Jack Talcott was in chat before too. So what's up, Jack? I don't know if Jack Talcott's still here, but what's up? Good to see you. Um, yeah. Let's maybe I'll pull a I'm gonna put chat back up on the screen, and where did the freaking overlay go? Like right there, bam. Um
Yeah, man, we got to get Jack up here.
Yeah, Jack, I got and Jack and anyone else, if I've got the link pinned up, so if you guys want to talk a little bit about socialism and capitalism, um, but yeah, and so one huge difference, as we start going into, well, would Jesus have been a socialist, or why is it sometimes failing to say that, um, why do people say that despite our creativity, despite our sort of pursuit of individual freedom, our ability to settle problems or disagreements peacefully, people still say capitalism is a bad system. Some people still argue that capitalism creates exploitation. Um, and this sort of goes over into Karl Marx a little bit. One of the things that Karl Marx told us was that, uh, was that, like, well, human, this is a kind of a funky idea, but he told us that his view of human perception wasn't that, like, we're utility maximizers. He didn't tell us that we're necessarily one thing or the other, but we're sort of this sensing being sort of creature. And this underlies a lot of Marxist sort of ideas about society. And so, like, one sort of sharp example of this is that, like, okay, if I have a selfie stick or something, this isn't anything other than a tripod to Marx. So, like, guys like Gramsci and Hegel, a lot of these guys would say, well, we discover and define this has a dialectic. It becomes something else. It becomes this thing that people use to get famous and share information on the internet, to maybe fulfill some sort of deep psychological need. But but for Marx, that's even a little superfluous. He says, well, I see this thing is 12 inches tall. It's physical. I can grab it. It spreads out. I put my cell phone here. It can fit any cell phone. And so, but maybe it does when I do this, and I have this sort of like sensing, perceiving function. I can feel that this changes how I perceive the world. Um, and so, hey, what's up? Upgrade 101. Um, yeah, and so, like, for Marx, his metaphysics that almost underlie some ideas is this weird sensing, perceiving thing, um, where, yeah, it's not just a brain on a screen, but the experience of the material world is creating some sort of form of reality. It's not a one-to-one correlation. Um,
What does Marx take on something like that?
well,
Or s-
maybe it is important or it's relevant for his ideas about, well, why do people get so pissed about
yeah,
capitalism?
thank you.
If you're fed, right? This kind of sounds like an argument you might hear in the blood sport universe. If you're fed, or like, if, yeah, you have food, you have a home, maybe society is a little upsetting though, but why is it that we don't seem to um, rationally or just statically sort of talk about and think about the actual physical world
Yeah,
around
man.
us and producing change from there? Why is there a revolution? Oh, your mic cut out.
Oh, sorry. It sounds like you're kind of pro capitalism. I just want to clarify that
Yeah,
rather
yeah,
than
I am
being
pro
neutral.
capital. Yeah, I'm pro capitalism. I'm very much about just, like, very easy to understand. Um, you know, if you're describing an economy and a liberal economy, a capitalist economy, uh, just do that, right? It doesn't have to be rocket science.
Okay, so I want to ask you because I'm not an expert on this, but I do have my opinions and questions, right, in my
Yeah,
philosophy. So
sure.
yeah, so like first of all, I have my two beefs with capitalism off top are a wouldn't capitalism only work in a free market? Like, and by that I mean like as soon as the government starts adding restrictions at all, like licensing fees, like taxes, like regulating the economy, like making something illegal, all of this is disrupting the free market. And if without a free market, I don't think you can have true capitalism. You have institutionalized controlled capitalism, which then is not in favor of the people. It's ultimately going to lead to problems within the capitalism, a corrupt capitalist system, right? Um, so because it's not a fair playing field. Capitalism only works when you have a free market, and a free market only works if you have a fair playing field. And as soon as you introduce laws and laws into that, then it's no longer free market. So you have corrupt capitalism is where I'm going with this. As long as there's laws. And my next thing beef with it is that because it takes money to get money, because capitalism is a lot about investing, because ultimately at the top of capitalism is investors. The more money you have to invest, the more money you can make. And what that does is it creates a funnel of income. Those who have more money get more money. Those who have less money lose more money and have less money. And until wealth is consolidated. And then you can take it to the very extreme where eventually in this capitalist system, wealth can become so consolidated that it's like what we have now, for example, where say, like, couldn't Elon Musk literally buy, and I'm not trying to throw his name out there. I was just saying, like, you get to the point where somebody can actually buy up so much property that eventually somebody should be able to buy up all the property. Capitalism is not sustainable right when you take it to its extreme. How can
Yeah,
you
that was
reconcile those?
that's like so that second one is Marx's main problem, right? Main problem with capitalism is he says, look, what you actually get is um, the problem isn't seeing your first factory for the first time, okay? And I'm gonna respond to this too, but so your problem isn't seeing your first factory. It's what happens is that the person that owns that factory is going to try to buy another one and another one because what's valuable is the capital. It's owning the factory in the first place. Everyone knows this already, right? So, and so this is in the Communist Manifesto. Very powerful writing. One of the most powerful sort of critiques of capitalism ever written. It's really great to read. Even the first sort of like 6, 7 paragraphs of it is like really punchy. Um, and Marx and Engels outline this process by which, well, if you can skirt regulation, if you're the guy who owns that first factory and you realize that in order to pursue your sort of wealth, you can get into politics, you can be involved in political decisions, you can take more and more from workers, you can find these sort of small, subtle levers that help you get more. And then what's happening is the people that had more are now the ones that are doing the same thing. You can get into politics. Now, 10 factories are influencing political decisions, preventing labor regulations, subjugating workers. So, one of the problems with this isn't the only way humans actually think about this. Joseph Schumpeter, who we're just talking about, says, well, as it turns out, all capitalists aren't these evil people. Some people see this competition in economics as a road to the bottom. It's a race to sort of flatten out and reduce and eliminate your competitive advantages. And so if you're actually building something in society, hey, Robin Webster's in chat too. And what's up, Alicia? Good to see you. And so if you're actually in a capitalist society, um, the response to this is that what Marx is doing is he's lying to you about human nature. Human nature is naturally industrious, creative, and innovative, and that also factors into the capital mechanism.
Well, okay, now hold on a second, because there's right like a premise for a foundation that must be agreed upon, that humans are, naturally, the exact wording you used might, but it was like they're innovative, they're industrious. I think it's kind of the tone I got there, and that if that truth isn't true, or if that point is not true, right, it has to be true for what I'm saying is, what if I were to just like, because I really feel this way. It's not like a
Yeah.
bad faith argument
Yeah.
that people aren't actually inherently industrious and all that stuff. That people are actually quite the opposite. I mean, couldn't that? I mean, otherwise, where I'm going with this is entrepreneurs
Well, this is going back to
are.
your first points, but yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but this is going back to
Oh
your
no.
first point a little
Oh yeah,
bit
you're
to
welcome
me.
to. Yeah, go for
Yeah.
it.
No, I was just saying it sounds like you're going back to, because the first thing you said was that, well, in capitalism, if you don't have a free market society, it doesn't work. If you don't have like laissez-faire capitalism, what actually ends up, so it's just you're not actually following the laws that that capitalists say exist in the first place. Um, and so people need to be free to innovate, or people need to be free to create, or maybe it's the case that Marx is right.
Yeah, but actually, yeah, I kind of nullify my point. Like, yeah, I mean, what you're saying, which is that even if we had a free market, as you mentioned before, once that first person had that first factory, and once you're born into an aged capitalist society, you're
Yeah.
born at a disadvantage because the families that accumulated the wealth now have the power because money is
Okay.
literally power in
So
capitalism.
I think this is a little bullshit, and let me explain to you why this is so. um if you tell me that somehow, for some reason, now people are, and I say Steelman told me that he thinks that if you're born creative, born industrious, born innovative, uh you lose that as soon as you have capital mechanisms in society. Okay, so this is different to me. This is a different type of argument, which is saying that, well, um who knows, maybe it's the case that it's like, well, when and where does this not happen? Haven't we seen economic success stories where, you had subjugated societies, you didn't have totally free governments, and you just put money into the system and people still innovate and create to some extent, they still build useful things. So that, to me, that's what being creative is.
Yeah, I hear
Does
you.
does
Well,
that make
what I mean
sense
is,
at
yeah, but
all?
I think there's a small percentage of the population, which I'm referring to as entrepreneurs. There's probably others, but I'm saying, for example, entrepreneurs are are like a class in our society, right? And they're there to try to like capitalize on capitalism, right? They're there to try to like innovate to, like you're saying, they're kind of, what I mean is that, yeah, you might have 10% of the population who's designed for that, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I would argue that maybe, yeah, you might have different positions in society. Maybe like there's
A
people who
lot.
aren't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and so
Okay.
yeah, so you get where I'm going with that. Then, right? Is that doesn't capitalism then favor a certain class of people, for
Yeah, I mean,
example?
capitalism isn't like yeah, yeah. I mean, and so, I'm kind of, because I can see on the one hand that capitalism does create some sort of favored class, that everyone can't be creative and innovative. That we got to think about it, right? That's a point to consider. It's also true that, like and I don't want to sound like Fox News, but to steel man a point here a little bit, is that, like, well, if you're living in a society and you have a microwave in an apartment, you're not being tortured right now. You're not in immense emotional and physical pain right now. And so it seems like even that type of claim, if I'm arguing for capitalism, maybe Marx is wrong. Maybe it's the case that not everyone can live their, or Marx is right. Maybe it's the case not everyone can live their human nature and stuff. But it's also whatever. It's true. It's like all the way up to the top. It's true that for um it's also true that maybe capitalism is still works, right? Capitalism still works because we want people with capital and businesses to be productive and successful. That's how we produce change. That's how change happens over time. And business owners are just one class of people that fight the good fight over long story arcs with technology and society.
All right, yeah, I do get what you're saying there. All right, well, I wanted to give one more little pushback on capitalism then, that I've had, which is like when we make things for profit that shouldn't be for profit, like, um, we could, I'll just throw medical care out there for an example. I'm not using the best examples, but what I'm trying to give an example of is how maybe, from human to human, not everything we do for each other should have to be for profit. But in a capitalist society, it does become for profit. Um, and I'm wondering, like, is that spiritually, like, does that spiritually align? You know what I'm saying? Like, can't we just that and also this was the other point here is that capitalism, like you're saying, you have business owners and whatnot, and what that does is it creates, you have to have a lower class in capitalism, right? I mean, that's kind of how it works. Um, and that's kind of what socialism, I guess, is trying to defeat, right? Is that you have to have somebody who needs something. If you're a factory worker, you have to have somebody that is coming to you to work for you because they're lacking. And so they need something. They need food, they need shelter. And if they don't work for you, they won't get it, which, I mean, I get that they have to work, but what I mean is, doesn't capitalism kind of exploit the fact that there's a working class, which I guess is Marx is saying, but that we have to have this working class and that we're going to ultimately exploit it to make sure that they stay a working class.
Yeah.
And I get that we need workers, but what I mean is
So
that
Aaron,
you have,
so
yeah.
yeah, so Aaron in chat has a few comments. He says crooks on Wall Street. He also says if so, or he, yeah, it looks like the boy spelling or whatever. But if socialism worked, why do people come here? Nobody wants to work. Cut EBT and grants. Um, Freeloaders, working class again.
Oh, wait, let me touch on that
Freeload,
guy's thing real quick. He
yeah,
says if whatever, if socialism worked, why did people come here? And I would say, um, that you're doing a causation correlation thing. What if it was the fact that we have other principles like liberty and, rights within our constitution that they might not have had, like a due process and things like that, that they might not have had. That's might be a reason why they're coming here too, or because they're from a different kind of government. I mean, to say that everyone's coming here because they want to be in our capitalist society, how can you even say that when most of the people are literally working for pennies? They're not even getting a
yeah.
capitalist wage.
So, Aaron, and another way to answer this as well is also just in terms of the sort of how people explain why America is so wealthy is part of it is that America was a sort of semi laissez-faire free trade zone with actually quite a few government levers for things like rail, steel, land, subsidies, education, the best education in the world for the last like 200-300 years. China as well as India both produce about as many, now outpacing the United States in PhDs. This is referred to as the brain drain, but this is a very current day state. But yeah, we're resource rich. And so if you asked what people actually went to, did people go to the United States or did they go to this resource rich liberal democracy? Um, they went to a very resource rich, isolated liberal democracy. America wasn't a country that was invaded ever. In Europe, there were wars heavily affected in the entire first half of the 20th century. Um, in Russia, partially because Russia, for whatever geographic regions and historical reasons that don't apply in the same sense at all today, you know, Russia had a lot of strong feudal and oligarchic systems. And so that would be my question back to you, Aaron, is what do people actually go to and run away from if you're talking about society? Um and yeah, oh, Aaron's a lady, cool. Sorry, I didn't mean to misgender you. And so like things like, yeah, things like women's rights, China's sweatshops pay good. And yeah, if you look at whatever the wealth distribution is in China, some people might see it as a really bad deal that the poorest people in Beijing live in, a 400 square foot apartment, maybe smaller. Um, people in Beijing, some people in Beijing might say, well, this is still actually, you have the opportunity or ability to make more money living in sort of, one of our big cities, even if you're not that well off. And yeah, and so those questions are those sort of give take push pull questions. um and yeah, so indoctrination is more important. I don't totally understand, indoctrination. It doesn't seem like when people are having a conversation or uh yeah, if there's like actual, it's cool when there's questions and ideas about how we view society and our economic system, you know, it's like, well, some people use that stuff to describe their very close world around them and stuff too. It's like, oh crap, I can now see that, you know, whatever it is, I can see that a book I have or a pair of glasses or something came from somewhere. Who has that? Who has that a pair of glasses? So, so that's it.
W-
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you mean? What did you mean by that glasses thing?
Oh yeah, like where so like yeah, something like, I mean, this sounds really unordinary or whatever it is, but like if you have an eyesight problem, if you have either eye disease, a degenerative eye disease, or you're just born and your eyes slowly go downhill. It's like, well, can you afford a new prescription every day? In the United States, we almost take it as a given that if you're in the US and you need glasses, you have eye insurance through your employer, or you can find an online sort of, you can get an eye exam and buy a pair online for $100 or whatever. Um, but that might be one of those issues where people say, well, isn't it kind of bullshit that I can't even get glasses and there's someone driving around with a Ferrari? Or like, why didn't we figure it out sooner that there are places you can go in society where people donate or sell used glasses, and I can get the prescription I need for cheap? Like, why didn't eBay exist? I'm sure someone's bought a used cell phone or computer.
Oh, dude, I got kind of a story about that that's kind of related. So I went to a flea market. It was like like a big one, they call it a flea market. It was like new stuff, It was like a mall or something like that. But anyways, um, there was this Chinese woman, of course, right? Because this is the context, man. There was a glasses stand, and so it's illegal for them to sell these. She had prescription glasses that worked for me that I could see better in. I forget how it all went down, but basically it was illegal for her to sell them to me or to display them. She like had them hidden and she like pulled them out behind the shelf and like had to sell them to me in secret because like apparently like it's illegal to sell someone prescription glasses without a prescription or something. I don't know what the law was, but it was some sort of, legal thing that was preventing that. And it's just interesting to me that like kind of like it was on these lines where it was like the free market, and it was, so they were super cheap. They were like $2 for this prescription pair of glasses, but because of the government regulations, right, it would cost me $100 to get
Yeah.
them, and so it's something to do, like I know there's something in there to do with that's why everything is so cheap. That's why we can buy, could be, I don't know, but like why we can buy everything from China for so cheap. Like these things I sell them for like $25, on Amazon, and I can get them for like less than $1 from China, and it just goes to show that we're like kind of screwing ourselves in a way because we're just paying up the ass for fucking everything, and the world is producing everything for practically nothing, and then we're just like, we have all this money, right? But we're overpaying for everything. So I don't know
Yeah.
exactly where our purchasing power lands,
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
So, but I'd also say that like we have to some small extent, maybe, um, to some small extent, don't we have to? Isn't there a difference between trusting where, if something that we can buy right now is fair, and also just being aware that that system could either be better for business or can really focus and be better for society? Um, you know, that's, to me, that's like a really important thing.
well,
Um,
well, so so you're making me appreciate this system that we have more, because what we have is, and we get the complaints about it, but the hybrid, right, of like socialism and capitalism, and you might know more about what it,
yeah, yeah.
and that
Yeah,
might be
just so
the yeah.
well, in either system, right? In either system, if I live in Iran or something, I might still be able to say, well, life goes on, but I'm concerned about, whether or not the Iranian government or the Iranian regime is supporting me as a person. In the United States, you can say the same thing. You can say, well, day to day, I don't mind buying an energy drink from Circle K. If I want an energy drink, I'll buy an energy drink from Circle K. But I am still concerned that, you know, it doesn't really totally intuitively make sense that in 50 years, when my kids or my sisters or my brother's kids are, at that point in time, they themselves are adults with a family. It doesn't make sense to me that we'll still have grocery stores selling everything wrapped in plastic and tin. Um, so, I don't, that is an economic, but it's also a political question.
Well, actually,
Uh,
that actually is great segue to this
yeah,
other problem with capitalism. Well, the other problem with
yeah,
capitalism, right? Capitalism, yeah, it says, consume and destroy the planet, right? They don't care. You can have I can come up with the perfect green product that's gonna, but if they can come up with a cheaper product that's gonna do more damage, if they can actually, um, like we're talking about, use the planet, damage the planet in order to gain profit, then that's okay according to capitalism. And so that seems like a problem, of course, that we're incentivizing. So that's what I mean, is that socialism should be this idea where everyone gets together and says, all right, it's not every man for himself anymore. How can we work as a team to make everything better for everyone, including the planet, which is better for everyone, right? Whereas capitalism says, me, let me
yeah.
exploit all of you.
Yeah. So if I could just really quickly skip by the fact that capitalism has made the world more peaceful, it's also possible that capitalism sort of capitalism working globally does tend towards more sustainable forms of consumerism and stuff like this. Like we have digital products and stuff now. We have technologies that reduce the lifetime carbon emissions. And so, maybe there is a practical question of when we get to like a net zero or something like that, when we're not destroying the planet actually. Um, and it's also true that, like, well, who knows? Maybe the values that capitalism most depends on to innovate and stuff like that need to come out more fully. Um, so that's how I would respond as a capitalist to a debate point. Uh, that like, um, I don't see examples where profoundly socialism is doing anything other than being less efficient, um, in some sense. And so Hey, what's up? We got Big Tyrone in chat too. So and also shout out to Jalib Jonas in chat too. What's up? Good to see you. But yeah, so that's my response is we don't go to war as much now, and it's also true that capitalism solves problems sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know about the war things, right? But we go to war all the
Yeah.
time, though. But I don't know what that was, kind of
That's
not really relevant. But
Yeah,
right.
not as much. Steven Pinker's written about that fact. He's written about the fact that, yeah, well, where is all the violence? Why don't we have really really bad industrial wars as often after World War II? And a lot of this is because, well, our evolutionary brains and society in general does make us more peaceful. Capitalism would be a part of that sort of innovation finding
Well,
process.
from my view, though, America or the United States has basically always been at war and is constantly perpetrating wars and is basically committing war crimes constantly. I can't think of a time when we weren't. I think there might have been like a 10-year period or something like that, maybe in the last 100 years or something, that we weren't involved in a war. And like you mentioned, our location is why we shouldn't have been in any wars. If we had not, right, gone overseas, we could have avoided all wars for the last 100 or 200 years. But we just keep going in, sending our troops overseas. So I'm just kind of pushing back on the idea that, well, yeah, we keep going into wars, and it's all based on false flags, like the Gulf of Tonkin, and you know, I could go into the other false flags, but they're all
Yeah.
predicated on them. But
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. Um Yeah, I don't know if that would settle the debate from my perspective, just in the sense that what is actually happening here is that it's like, well, look, I'm not the general in the world, right? Okay, so I'm not the one who like made that decision, but that still means that I can address the fundamental cause of what that decision was. So, like for me, because I am on the left, even though I am a capital. I would argue for liberalism. I'm sort of steel manning the point right now, but um, I would still say that, well, we have to ask why not just the event itself was significant, but the events surrounding the event and all of the other things that were happening at that time. If life expectancies were largely going up, if countries um, do get richer over time, then we should condemn unjust wars, but we also can't say that that was a result of like liberal capitalism in the 20th century, or maybe that's all it is,
Yeah,
because it's
I mean,
very
it may
easy,
be.
like, right? Like, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah, that's hard to tell. Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, I'm not sure how that plays into our. Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is that you have things like Halliburton. We saw that where they were making a bunch of money off of wars. And that's probably part of capitalism is the military-industrial complex. War becomes profitable. This is actually a perfect point of what I'm making. Is it's not just the healthcare industry, right? It's the war industry. Capitalism it isn't only making your health, isn't it basically making your well, I don't know if it's making your healthcare more, but it's perpetuating wars through profits from wars. But
yeah.
I'm not saying socialism is going to cure that. I think what we're kind of also touching on is that government, whoever's in charge, is right. It could be corrupt, and I think that no matter what system you're in, very few people are going to be in charge. Even if we had a socialist society, which we kind of do, right? But like, who's making the
But
decisions? Who's
but
running this?
we don't though. We have a capitalist society that has a social safety net. That's what I would argue, is that, like, look, you can't say that either land subsidies or agriculture subsidies um public healthcare programs and stuff like this isn't socialism. This is still very much capitalism. Call it what it is that this has been dealing with the result of capitalism. It's been dealing with change that society and markets didn't manage. um, and so it's not that those are bad things. Those aren't symptoms of like a failed government. That is what a society and government does when it works. But because they've always been to enable more capitalism, like in the United States there isn't any socialism. It's mostly capitalism.
Okay, so what do you think about the universal basic income? That what I mean by that is you can kind of meld social directly instead of just a safety net, right? You meld socialism with capitalism and say, look, now we have machines that can do all the workers' jobs. We can either get rid of the machines and send you all to work, or we can put the machines there and you guys can go home, and you guys can share in the benefits, just like you were.
Yeah, all the time. Yeah. um I don't know. Who knows? Maybe like your point you were making before with AI, with AI is replacing industrialization. AI is replacing a lot of what people maybe said they thought they would know about economic growth patterns and the way capital can be efficiently and effectively reinvested. Right? All of these small, very tangible, real world things that should be on the top of the charts at like CNBC Money or Fox
Yeah.
Business. Like this actually changes our value preferences and sort of recontextualizes where well, like, you know this is how far back this goes. Is if in the 1930s or 40s or 50s or 60s I said, well, Burlington Northern Santa Fe, the rail line, they own my pension, right? They own my pension. um and so I love, I'm upset sometimes. I'm a worker, but I might have a union or something, but I still love my company because they're going to help me retire one day. They're putting food on the table when I get hours. Things work out really well for me with AI and stuff, where it's where people are starting to ask, like, for the first time or something, like, well, can I be the, whatever bullshit. Shouldn't we start running sort of smaller scale experiments in various municipalities or states, asking why we can't have a universal basic income, asking why it can't be the case that um, somehow markets are more intelligently guided or something, or why we can't free up that sort of global competition from these little incubators or tech hubs. Um, you know, and so it's weird because in Arizona, a tangible example of this is we do have Doug Ducey, we've got Amazon and Microsoft and Facebook all out here at ASU. We've got a couple electric car manufacturing plants. We've got Taser. We've got all kinds of stuff out here. Um, and when you look at it from a certain light, it's like, well, this is sort of bringing in industry, maybe too competitively, but this looks more like socialism when a lot of this is from the state. And the reason it works so well is because the technology and the people work well. It has nothing to do with like laissez-faire market forces just to begin with. It has to do with a lot. So that's a rambling answer, but that's how I feel about it.
No, that's cool. Yeah, that makes sense. I think capitalism has a lot of great features. Um,
Um, wait. So Alicia says Republicans have no idea how well capitalism could work if not for mismanaged money, and they don't know how to manage money. Period. So that's why I say they will never understand. LOL. Sorry, I dislike them so bad right now. Yeah. Well. Okay. So, and this is maybe training wheels for myself as well as some of the MAGA folks. A little bit. It's like, but like honestly, if it's the case, so think about it this way. Let's say Republicans talk a big game about small business and markets and stuff like this. Republicans always say that free market capitalism is what works best. Well, when exactly does that, like, okay, so I see that, maybe this is because Americans are really good at making decisions and investing in this stuff. But when is it actually the case that Republicans actually care about business? They're 1,000 miles away from the closest like water well to like Wall Street. Americans have no transparency on their relationship with big corporations. They have no transparency into their understanding of the social relevance of these businesses. And so you say you talk about small businesses, you might go out and do something for it even, but this isn't making a decision. It's not representing people. Like, I don't know if,
yeah,
like, if that makes any
yeah,
sense, or if it makes a little sense where it's like, well, like, wouldn't,
yeah. Well, I think
isn't it isn't it
kind of
isn't it sort of isn't it sort of like if you're the problem you were trying to solve in the first place is that markets are inefficient and therefore people are worse off because of it. That's the kind of fucking nasty, completely illogical sort of thing to have existing. um like, and MAGA, feel free to speak up or whatever, but like, or Republicans in chat, respect to you guys. Just doing sort of some debate points, but like if that's the problem you're trying to solve in the first place, isn't it really really horrible that you're not even going into the thing that you don't like? You're saying laissez-faire. That's completely irrational. It's not irrational. You say it's not irrational to stay hands off because people will fix it, and yet you have the same complaint year after year after year after year, and your decision is to say it's irrational. And now you're the bad guy.
yeah. I think you're kind of you're touching on the fact that politicians are sort of out of touch with the public, right? And they're really just in it for their own personal gain at this point. Is that kind of what or they're just sort of that's kind of how I felt like, I guess maybe what I was gathering is that they're so far out of touch with reality, or with helping the people, that to become a
Yeah,
politician is literally just to rise to the cream of the capitalist society, right? You can just pass
sure,
laws and
sure,
make more
sure.
money.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah. Well,
yeah,
not only that, but it's the, to me as someone who's center left, it's the backlog that starts coming up. And a lot of times the backlog is recognized. You see that people are getting left behind by modernity. You see that that markets are growing where it's most profitable to grow, as we would expect. Um, And as a result of this, you have skills, you've got education concerns, you've got healthcare, and then you still have to somehow find a way to make it make sense for that sort of like top down identity. And so to me, it's not a small thing to say that we have a backlog, because if we do have a backlog in like markets and politicians are out of touch in the way that you put it, um, uh, you know, people, then it's like, well, as a politician, how do you even have faith that people are judging markets correctly in the first place? Shouldn't that be really deeply problematic? And and then the BS of it is, people ask where the risk is in markets right now. People ask, what are we actually able to afford and do, and judge our values appropriately? And people presume that while we can create silos and think rationally and differentiate some of this, when it becomes unaddressed, it does become a mounting issue to consider. Um, that should be taken to mean that we can't make as good of a decision about stuff.
Well, hey, I saw someone comment and I checked. I just wanted to let you know about. So if they're watching this on the phone, the chat at the bottom of the screen is like disrupting the
Oh, it's really
actual
that
chat.
bad? That's my bad.
They're
Oops.
overlapping. That's all.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, but anyway, no, I really appreciate chatting with you. And
yeah,
uh, y- I'm gonna keep an eye out and finish up your show here, and hopefully I'll either hop on another time or also
yeah,
I'll maybe see you on another panel.
yeah. Do you have a channel or anything that I can shout out in chat?
Oh yeah, that's cool. Yeah, chambers of logic. Because I created that AI program where they can listen in to a debate and then
The
judge the
debate,
debate.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
remember you telling us about that on a grid show. Yeah.
yeah, and I never did like really use it because, um, well, the real reason is because I actually prefer like a good faith discussion like we're having. Not this one-upsmanship. We got 5 minutes to try to fucking bad faith each other. Um, so
Yeah.
it sounded like a good idea for money, but like I'm just not that much of a grift, or like I can't just fucking do shit like that for money, right? Like I wish I could. I tried, but I'm like I just join the debates and have a good faith discussion, and maybe debate like VK for money and shit like that. But I never did use that Chambers of Logic channel for what I had anticipated it to be. Um, but I kind of liked the name, and I kind of liked the. Yeah, I don't know. I was like, I could change it back to the Steelman, but I don't want to. I'm like sort of like a Taoist. I mean, like a Taoist or like a Zen Buddhist. Um, where like I don't need to be attached to a certain name. Think I've changed my name on here already. Like I used to go by Lawyer Dog, and I have a few different like, you know, I. But but now people after now everybody knows me by this name, so I'm gonna stick with this name so people don't. I don't just keep changing it up. But at the same point, I'm like, I don't need to like cling to the name and like make it into this. I was like, I'll just leave the Chambers of Logic. I like that. I like having the dual, whatever. So you can't catch me at the Steelman, but you can catch me at Chambers of Logic.
Yeah,
Um,
it's cool. Yeah, definitely.
yeah, man. And I hope you subscribe because like I'll go live every once in a while. Um, and hopefully I can get you in the room and we can have some more discussions. I'm a subscriber too, so I'll be hopping on your show more, I'm sure, and everything. But
Cool.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I do a bunch of mobile stuff and whatever as well. But yeah, I love if I'm live 2 or 3 hours a day, I might spend another 2 or 3 hours or whatever it is doing stuff with other people, or whatever that is. And so yeah, it's just cool to have
Oh yeah.
good conversations and all that.
I was just thinking about you last night on Raging Tomato when you were telling everybody to shut the fuck up, dude. That was
Yeah,
so
well,
fucking
well.
funny.
So, and just for the chat. So yesterday I was doing some debating, and we had a debate about masculinity and politics, and it was crazy. They didn't touch a single sort of actual outcome of masculinity and perceived masculinity, whether it's norms, performative, or even just taking it at face value what people say masculinity is. It's like, and so it was crazy. Everyone wanted
Yeah.
to hear themselves talk. Maybe I'm in the same boat, but I don't think so, So
Yeah, that's why I actually appreciate your show, is because there's like that. You're kind of like me. Like there's very few of us. Flo's kind of like one of them, but his channel is still a bunch of bullshit because all of his guests. But it's like where we try to like keep things, at least on like an upper level of like thinking. We're not just like throwing out bullshit and like, So I like that about you. You're logical. You have like interesting, like a thought process that's beyond just like fuckery or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So I
Yeah,
appreciate that about you, man. It's good to see you.
cool. Yeah, have a good night.
All right. Peace.
How's everybody doing? Hope everybody's good. I'm gonna folks. Hey, what's up, Jesse Top G Peterson? Good to see you again. Good to see you again. Yeah, you missed the first half of our. I just had a conversation debate with Steelman a little bit, and yeah, uh, kind of the first half of the show. The first half of the show uh, I kind of went through some of the history of thought and ideas behind like big time capitalism and stuff. But yeah, if you missed Chambers of Logic, aka the Steel Man, but his channel is Chambers of Logic, feel free to click the link and check it out. Subscribe. He's a cool dude. We've battled in some of the same sort of blood sport debate arenas. He's a nice guy. He's never one of these guys that seems out of control. He's never making like really crazy arguments that don't make any sense. So yeah, definitely would recommend checking him out if you're comfortable doing that. Yeah, and we got as far as not covering in totality socialism and what distinguishes it. What actually yeah, so that's kind of the point, is why isn't capitalism versus socialism just I want this and I want that? Does everything reduce down to just people saying I want, I want, I want? So I wanted to share, your buddy Duck wanted to share his best knowledge, not cut anybody off at the knees. Folks, I wanted to be the one to bring it to you live. I wanted to bring it to you uncut. I wanted to bring it to you unapologetically. That the thing that we're doing here is we're talking about why people believe what they believe in general. No, we're not. No, we're not. We're talking capitalism and socialism. It's one thing, folks. Get your headspace right, So that's where we're at, folks. That's where we are. Yeah. And so, yeah, we kind of left off Karl Marx told us that, well, when we sense things, we're sensing and perceiving the physical world, but you're a human. I'm a human. I'm alive, gosh darn it. I'm an artist. I'm a businessman. I'm a husband. I'm a wife. I have a family. I'm a person. Respect me for who I am. And so Karl Marx tells us, you got to, maybe at some point you have to factor this into our social, economic, and political judgments, our socio-economic judgments. If I have the selfie stick, I see the physical stick, 12 inches tall, 10 inches tall, nice and bendy. You can curl this thing till the cows come home. And for Karl Marx, he says, well, while you see this physical thing, you're both sensing and perceiving. That subjective perception of what the physical world the material world must be like, is part of what a human is. You can't get rid of it. You can't shake it off. I can give you a ruler, and then what are you doing? While you're measuring this, while you're telling me about the hydrocarbons or carbon in here, you're telling me about the petroleum derivative plastic. You're telling me about the tin or the copper. Who knows? Who knows where this came from? I don't know. Maybe Kazakhstan or something. Who knows? Maybe the tin comes from the Congo or something. I don't know. But while you have the tin and the oil and everything, the plastic, everything that comes from something in this thing, If I give you a ruler to measure it and talk about those things, well, now you just have those types of judgments that you're sensing and perceiving. Oh my God, right? I don't have to think about it. It's just philosophy. It's what it is. It's what it is. It's that, yeah. You know, you don't have to say this modern philosophy stuff. Well, I relate to something in some sense, so. But yeah, you know, some socialist thought, some Marxist thought, you know, appeals down to that metaphysics and says, well, because the fact that I'm a human sensing and perceiving things, I have to have these other traits. I have to be somehow creative. I have to be somehow, you know, existing within a society and not just like having coordinate space. So. Russia, Karl Marx is good. American guy from a small town, privileged white America. The world loves Trump, says Spike. Hey, what's up, Spike? Good to see you. And yeah, also I love Trump. Donald Trump is a hero to the nation. Yeah. And so this is one brand of socialism, is like intentional socialism, intentional Marxism, saying that, and Steelman talked about this while he was up here a little bit. You know, if you're not being creative, if it's the case that capitalism says only 5% of people get to live their dreams, even if we're being good faith or we trust that and we say, well, that's actually what that is. You know, you're Jeff Bezos, you're living your dream. That's the best life a Jeff Bezos could live. You could buy 10 Jeff Bezoses and all of them are living their best life in all possible worlds, right? All possible versions of reality. That's Jeff's life. And so, all possible worlds. So Karl Marx and those of his ilk who base Marxism or socialism on human nature, would tell us that the reason capitalism is oppressive isn't just because of economic inequality. Right? That's playing on capitalism's terms. It's not competitive. It's not a competitive idea to say, well, capitalism cares about how rich you are, and so capitalism wants you to make an argument in one way that says, if you are not a rich capitalist, you're just not doing capitalism well, or you're allowed to say that if you're not a rich capitalist, you don't like capitalism, and therefore you're just not playing. You're just not playing. And Karl Marx would say, well, no, based on my metaphysics, based on my perception of what a human being is, of what our knowledge is like and our senses are like, based on that, you can't get out of the fact that you're just a human in society in all cases. And in the case of capitalism, this is one example of exploitation. Bam. Really brutal. And so it's not surprising that after Marx, you do get guys like Gramsci. He's a historicist. I don't know. There's also like Marxist communist Zionism as well. So you get arguments from a theological tradition of Zionism, a theological tradition that says, well, you know, it seems that if you are, or theological or political, that, well, if a society can't support humans in a totality, even if that's utopian, well, then you should question the economic system. That's a lot simpler to say. I don't need to go read Marx's metaphysics as much, but if it's true that, capitalism, liberal democracy exploits people, well, then I'm siding in the capitalism versus socialism side. I'm not going with capitalism in that side, folks. Maybe not me personally, but hey, thanks, Department of TOS guidelines. Yeah. Appreciate you. But don't arrest me for not having a license or operating a death machine on wheels, bro. My rights, bro. Yeah. This is one very strong argument for socialism, is that, well, capitalism is exploitative. You can't get out of it. Even the best form of capitalism, the best version of it, isn't utopian. It's not even realistic. For most people, it's not realistic. For most people in the world who are proclaimed socialists, and they're really eager about driving a change strategically, in reality and in the real world, the reality is what do you get with capitalism? You get the best 5 years of your life. You get the most opportunistic and opportune 5 years of your life. And after that, it's back to not even being able to sort of conceptualize how capitalism created more opportunities than it removed in the first place. And Marx says, again, because this is just how humans are, you don't just have the measuring stick, you've got the measuring stick with the perception of it. Think about it, measure it. Think about it, measure it, and you're still perceiving it. Maybe you'll create something with it. Maybe there's an interpretation to that material reality that just happens in our brain without going too far into it. There's no money without mint, and no mint without bad breath. That's funny. Why do you think we have nothing in America compared to China? The government has their own individual agendas in a democracy, yet there's no face to put the blame on except El Presidente. Yeah, we got a lot. We all have quite a bit of wealth. See ya. Have a good work or whatever it is. You should invest in a professional camera, bro, and have a way of explaining boring stuff and making it interesting. Yeah, that's political. I don't know. There's people that do well with just a cell phone. I have a Chromebook. I'm happy enough with it. Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, cool. So, yeah, if you don't want to be here, you can leave too. Like, that's the other answer to that, is right? That's more about freedom than it is about economics, bro. Let's get off the stream. There are, right? You could say this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Go Google capitalism versus socialism. I don't even want you to do this topic. So, but here we are. Here we all are. Figure out how to do it better next time. Yeah, but you also have, Rousseau's one of these guys who might, when we see European style socialism, he doesn't say that you have this sort of death machine called capitalism. Rousseau doesn't say that. Rousseau doesn't tell us that, well, capitalism is a system that strategically works against the people. It isn't a system which, for whatever reason or why, also. Oh, thank you. I appreciate you. Yeah, definitely. So, if you're talking about strategy and competition, Rousseau just says, well, people conceive of freedom first, and then after you have freedom, after you conceive of a form of liberal democracy, then you get into what society does. Then you get into competition. Where Marx almost flips this around and says, in capitalism, there's no way to perceive society except for this competitive anti-human machine, this force. So if you can understand or see both of those sort of topologies playing out, if you can understand how that sort of concomitant circumstance of justice and individual self-description with an individual, social description, political description, economic description, all of those things are working together. Hey, what's up, Joel? Good to see you. We conceive of all of these forces somehow, not our best friends, not needing to cling to our jobs or our job titles, not needing to cling to our identity by the car we own or the church we go to or the fact that we don't go to church. When we don't have to cling to those things, and instead what we're looking at is, well, what is my identity and what system am I living in? We start to see that, well, maybe you're a capitalist, maybe you're a socialist, but I have to start understanding if freedom is coming first, or if my ability to sort of sense and make judgments is, or maybe these things are inseparably entwined, and I have to believe something deeply, like an ideology or like a sort of well-found, well-held, closely held belief or something like this. So from FS, the only people who are for socialism are the people who have never lived in a socialist country. If you did, you would never want to again. You would never want to again. Yeah, that's cool. What's up, Senior JDK? No, if you look at it, I don't know, you might not be able to see the title of the video. It's Capitalism versus Socialism. So we are covering the socialism side. If you guys want to promote something or argue or debate or something, there is a link pinned, but we're just getting through. I would wait a second to bring you up. We're just getting through some of the arguments for socialism. Yeah, I was actually steel manning liberalism and capitalism just a little bit earlier, but yeah. So FS, one response I have to that comment, that the only people who are for socialism are people who've never lived there. The main response would be that, well, look at Europe. Europe was in two horrible wars: the First World War, the Second World War. This was after they were already in a ton of different wars, and even after this, cooperation and competition prior to the EU was always confusing for people. People didn't understand that, do I have a national identity or a European identity? Because it's so easy. I can hop on a train or a bus in theory and go anywhere. And so thinking in terms of liberalism, as well as liberal conceptions of socialism, which is a very thick party tradition, labor parties in Europe, most labor parties in Europe, to a large extent, right? So, the argument here is that, well, you do want to live in a socialist country because what do you get otherwise? You get war, you can't go see your friends, you can't explore your ideas in the environment like you would want to, and society should be able to do those things. Because I'm a free person, society, because I have both the negative freedom as well as a perception of some positive freedoms of things I should be able to do, society should be able to go do those things. So I want to live in a socialist country in this case, right? If I'm arguing against your point, I want to live in a socialist country. I want to live in a liberal socialist democracy, a democratic socialist country. And the reason is because there's a reason that happened in the first place, or there's a reason this is more congruent with the way that people see themselves and see society, see politics. Capitalism or any way of living is 1,000 times better than living in a socialist country. Yeah, I mean, you can look at countries like, I think Egypt isn't. Let me see. Let's see. I would imagine Egypt is far more capitalist than socialist. Yeah, Egypt is a country that in recent years, because we're talking about capitalism in general, Egypt has had some rough years of economic growth, inconsistent, right? They're okay. There's there's worse places in the world than Egypt. They're also not an economic superpower. And so, you can always ask, well, if capitalism produces these downturns and you see more rises of fringe political groups or political extremism or something like that, right? I don't know if that's going to be hard for anyone in chat to wrap your head around, that, you can say that seeing like the Muslim Brotherhood is both promoting sort of fringe political beliefs, but there's also these offshoots which appear to be radicalized or extremist. You can say that, well, this is partially the external effects of capitalism, of committing to a society to free market principles, trying to commit to laissez-faire economics when you can. It's better, it's more clear for everyone that this is good. And then you're seeing that, well, this is causing a rise of, who knows, a group that I think Muslim Brotherhood has been associated with. Islam in some ways has been associated with socialism. Ba'athist regimes are, Ba'athist governments are idealized as, holding the values of socialism. So I don't know. I'm not trying to confuse you, but I see a clear point that's just doesn't really mean anything. Capitalism or any way of living is 1,000 times better than living in a socialist country. Well, why? It's a cool idea, but if it's true, if you know something that no one else on earth knows, then I want that 1000x return, buddy. I want that 1000x return on my life. Hey, what's up, Joel and Joseph? Good to see you. Hello, 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 hello. Hello, hello, hello. Yeah, I believe there's been a lot of Christian socialist movements across time too. If you're Catholic, is there any, maybe I'm not political, but my Catholic school nuns, is there anything just about capitalism? Is there any justice here? I'm not going to say I'm a socialist or a communist, but what justice? What did God make us for? Nothing, sister. Nothing, but okay, keep going. Keep going. Yeah, so, yeah, what about human dignity and stuff like that? Maybe you don't need, maybe you should have like some sort of theoretical backing or have some knowledge of the ideas. You don't have to. Human nature and stuff like this. But maybe you can also just say, well, what about justice? What about human dignity? What about looking at extreme poverty? Maybe God didn't care, right? This is maybe like a Christian socialist argument. God doesn't care if you're poor. God cares if you're destitute. Maybe God cares a little bit about the dignity of unfair working conditions, being overworked or something. Maybe this is something that you can just imagine what kind of asshole, you're saying God is, because, what kind of person you're saying God is because he's making you do this. No, but if you do hold Christian values, I don't, but if you do hold Christian values, who knows, maybe socialism and capitalism can't really solve that question of, well, what is it like to live in a society? That's all you're allowed to do. But if you're creating a system where people don't have dignity, people can't be all that healthy and stuff, who knows? The doctrine for capitalism doesn't allow for government subsidizing the private sector, doesn't allow for lobbying, doesn't allow for the hoarding of housing to rent. Hey, Riles07, interesting question. If you don't mind telling me what country or hemisphere you're from. That looks like a very British or American idea. We aren't practicing capitalism, we're practicing cronyism. Yeah. Yeah, and so you mean subsidizing the private sector, not in the sense of, well, I don't know, maybe you mean it in two ways. Maybe you mean this in two ways, but I'm curious if what you would think of, like, subsidizing the private sector. I could really stretch it out and say something like DARPA or National Institute of Health grants and stuff like this, NIH. what is it, NSF or whatever, I could look at it as research funding. I could also look at it as like, well, there is a grant fund. There's a grant fund for AI. I could also look at it as, well, energy, right? Energy, if those are private sector companies, does national security finally come in, or should it have come in earlier, or something like that? So I'm curious how you're using Canada. Yeah. So I would just be curious about subsidizing of private sector and stuff. Yeah, it's cool. It's interesting. Somewhere between technocracy and democratic decision making. Just saying it can happen, and it does happen, that the government subsidizes the private sector, to me doesn't undermine capitalism. The United States, maybe very violently, in a lot of ways, but the United States, right? I don't think it's the most unethical thing in the world, unless you're a squirrel, to say we're going to build 3,000 miles of railroad. If you're that squirrel that we're going to build over your home, it's pretty unethical to build that railroad. In social reasoning, if we're talking about society and knowledge about society, saying that, well, people are most likely not going to invade the US, and so it's good for us to spread out and kind of see what the land has in store. We have to do it eventually. We have to have urban cities. We have to be able to have people with educations and practical skills working everywhere. Social reasoning, if you want to work on unifying some sort of moral theory, that's cool, but pertaining to justice, I don't see capitalism being undermined there. Did you enjoy your shared stream, Duck? Yeah. I had a lot of fun. Hey, what's up, Pac? Good to see you. Bailouts for failed firms, Wall Street, etc. should have been more specific. Your examples are sensible. Yeah, cool. I appreciate it. I always take the W. Whoa. Speaking of W's, I almost fell out of my chair. You see how that works, folks. I am an atheist, but the Lord does work in mysterious ways when he comes around. Most often I say, I don't see him. Then I'm on my butt, trying to stand back up. Was that you, Lord? Again? Yeah, the New York City shooting. Yeah, I don't have that much information. I probably know less or the same that you do. I heard it was a guy who, former regular football player, maybe someone with some athletic history, played football, and had a history of mental health and his whatever it was. So he had so he went to New York and all this other stuff. And yeah. So who knows? We'll wait for social media to take over. If they can all the sharks saying, I wonder if I can make this like Luigi. I wonder if I can make this like a healthcare CEO. Guy with a family, just traveling for a conference, like a lot of people do. People like to do business in person. Let's try it out. I'll try it out. Whatever you got, Pack Cricket. Whatever you got, Pack. Yeah. Hey, what's up, Browns boy? Um, yeah, so, uh, yeah, so, um, to Browns boy, I don't really know the machine lies. I don't think we would have anything in common to debate. He seems like a smart enough guy and all this other stuff. Um, yeah, I don't know. A little too much panel verse for I think what I'm trying to do. Ducks Y. So, but what's your stance on capital punishment? My stance on capital punishment is, yeah, I'm against capital punishment. The main reason is I don't think that it could be a very long answer, but the short version is that the justice system never has enough information that even if it was conceivable that it's justified to take a life for a crime, the justice system itself never produces enough information to satisfy whatever conditions would be there. It's not only unclear, but the trial process is set up to primarily determine guilt. It's not set up to have restorative justice in a sense for the victims, but also, in the sense that someone who is guilty of a crime where there's physical evidence they committed a crime can share what were the circumstances were behind that crime, what they think is most relevant for other people to know. And so how can we say that a person in a society is being punished by society in the sense that we don't know how they relate to that society? You're for capital punishment, with some exceptions. Yeah, if you want to share it in chat, you've got the floor, sir. You've got the floor, sir, person. Yeah, and so if I spent more time on that sort of same capital punishment argument, it's saying that, well, the process of actually seeking justice and accomplishing the ends of the law based on the nature of the law are always satisfied better when you don't have capital punishment on the murder. You don't on the table. If and so this is the longer form of that argument is, for me, I have explanations and reasons why I think that if you are telling someone that, well, from the first second you walk into the police station, you're getting fingerprinted by the detective and all this stuff, from that first second, you're in a society that can take your life for a capital murder crime, a capital crime. It is impossible, therefore, for the legal process to actually have that person relate to society and the process in such a way that a capital punishment can be carried out and stuff. So, yeah, I would still say jail is a punishment, but I would, if it was, my opinion would be that someone saying they don't mind being in jail isn't the same thing as having the physical and psychological effects of being in jail. And so a life sentence is itself pretty brutal. A life sentence is itself pretty brutal. In some cases, that might just be how society deals with things. And so, if you're asking about justice and dignity in the first place, alongside punishment, right? If we're trying to be earnest towards the whole political process and all this stuff, well, that would have to move into what that internment looks like and why it looks that way. Yeah. Shouldn't you have gone to court better, right? Isn't that like, I feel like that's a very Catholic way of looking at it, is like, well, if this person is someone who's going to go out and kill people and the end result is they're going to be separated from society to keep society safe, shouldn't you take that fact into account, that that's what's going to happen while you're going through the court process? Yeah. 2014 Peshawar massacre. I don't. I don't. I do not know. How Peshawar school massacre. Wow. In Peshawar, Pakistan, 6 gunmen affiliated with Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan (TTP) stormed the school, resulting in the deaths of 149 people, including 132 children and 9 staff. The attackers, armed with grenades and automatic rifles, entered the main assembly hall where students were taking a first aid lesson and then proceeded to shoot indiscriminately. The siege lasted for about 8 hours. The TTP claimed responsibility for the attack, stating it was in retaliation for a Pakistani army offensive against the group in North Waziristan. They attacked, considered the deadliest by an army group of Pakistan's history, sparked widespread condemnation locally and internationally. The massacre had a profound impact on Pakistan, leading to the establishment of the National Action Plan to combat terrorism, and the lifting of a moratorium on the death penalty in terror-related cases. The attack also heavily influenced public opinion, leading to a decline in support for insurgent groups like the TTP. Wow. Oh, wow. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So from what I know about terrorism, which isn't all that much, is that there's always really deep, like almost ethnographic, cultural reasons why people actually go to extremism. It's rarely the case. I don't know anything about the case, but like, it would be hard for me to imagine a scenario where the TTP were like, we're gonna form our own little mini hit squad, and that's just the idea from the beginning, is we form a hit squad to go do something really horrible, right? Really bad idea to have your name on that. Doesn't, whatever your perceptions of things is or are. And so, restorative justice, I'm not trying to obviously write over what you know about this, but restorative justice would almost tell us that, like, well, you have to sort of understand, if it's not the case that they said from the beginning, we're going to form a hit squad to go attack this school, but it's something that happened, you have to almost roll back that tape and say, well, where did where did this informal non-state group come from? What are the circumstances in society, and what actually, if I'm investigating and leading a forceful process, like my goal from the beginning of all of that would be saying, well, what happened, and what can people, not for like competitive reasons, but social reasons, what can people learn from this event? And then you also have the, yeah. You have political, so it's hard. That seems like a very deep political violence that happens on like a local level or something. And so whenever you have those sort of like law of the land, national interest, law of the land stories, like in Minnesota, in the US case, we had lawmakers that got shot. It would more often be the case that, it would more often be the case that you do usually have pretty severe punishment. You probably have investigative processes that are fairly linear, stuff like that. But the big scale example of the same thing is, who knows? Maybe you agree or disagree with the United States invading Iraq and Afghanistan, lots of violence, toppling the Ba'athist government in Iraq, throwing out the Taliban, who are now back in power, getting in trouble, the ICC. But one way to view it, just one perspective, is that, well, George Bush didn't share who the, what is it? What was Saddam's Yeah, the Republican Guard. You don't tell us who the Republican Guard are. We don't have a conversation about Saddam Hussein. Why, you're the regime leader. You have a long military history. I believe, what is his name? Uday. I believe your brother does too. We're, uh, good time to talk about all this stuff over 2 years. We're going to do our best. And then also, I'm not going to share who is the Taliban, what are Mujahideen in Afghanistan. I'm going to tell you everyone's a terrorist. It's a really bad social narrative. It's especially dangerous when you have 18 and 20-year-old men and women thinking about joining the military or whatever it is. So, Duck is editing me. I don't think so, Bob. Bob, I wouldn't be editing you, whatever the actual narrative is. Whatever the actual narrative is. So, I don't think I edit. I try not to edit people. Try not to edit ideas. Is that true? I don't know. Maybe I can't say it's true. It's not true. That's a better question. There you go. This is why I depend on chat. My brain gets fried, guys. Folks, my brain is fried. All tiny little ideas going through my head all day. Whoa. Yeah, but this is one of the reasons, right? I'm not crashing out. I'm just working up to a point. This is one of the reasons why we should, in my estimation, we're looking a little suave. We're looking kind of handsome today, a little bit nice. We should sort of estimate that politicians, when there are either persistent or lingering or sporadic and random acts of political violence or any sort of crime and phenomenon that we're looking at in society, be able to, from outside, engage both the justice system as well as from the outside, engage a society. We should assume that, the level of transparency, people are good at their jobs and can also have discussions and understand the social and political context for things. It's always difficult to even say, so Pat Cricket, if I was going to be really harsh and rude to we're going to reinstitute the death penalty here. I'm American. I hate seeing civil rights abuses. I know my country is really bad, but I hate seeing the death penalty too. I'm just not that friendly of a guy. And it's like, well, how would I actually know in that process that Pakistanis actually wanted the death penalty? What is the justification, right? What, over the course of the next 10 years, if we say we're allowed to execute people, shouldn't it be the case? I haven't deleted anything. I haven't touched comments. But yeah, shouldn't it be the case that, in the United States, over 5 or 10 years, why are people in Pakistan saying we have the death penalty, right? Are there people that are thinking that, well, this is because we're moving towards some sort of form of social capitalism a little bit. We're focusing on both regional and international and domestic development. Is this because we do have an Islamic majority, and so some Islamic values that favor retributive punishment, as a form of justice, we have to satisfy those morals in a slightly secular sense in some ways. Just even imagining that that's all it could be, it couldn't even be more complicated. That's already a really weird idea to change that. Now we have the death penalty. That's already a lot to manage. Versus saying that, well, once we do a thorough investigation, and yeah, just like in the United States, once you thoroughly investigate something, you figure out what can be sort of better, worse, whatever it is. Well, now because of that, also, does this suck, guys? I don't know. I'm going to put just the chat on. If this one still sucks, let me know. I'll take it down. But, in my country or something, if we figure out the reason something happened and we have people on all sides, as much as they can recognize and appreciate or discuss something. Yogi says, I'm Bob. If you guys can't see the stream, if it still sucks and I'm just doing the same mistake over and over again, let me know. With the Hebrew in the name, of course. Of course. Of course you would. Yeah, let's just start sending everything to the ICC. Everything goes to the ICC. At least it goes to the people that wrote their textbooks, not the people actually doing the job. Just the people that are in the ICC. Yeah, it's like, well, you guys sure know how to manage it whenever there's a genocide, you know? We show you a picture of Pinochet and you get all hot and bothered. All of a sudden people are scurrying around, moving around, running around. That must mean you're also good at it. It must mean that we are also good at it. I don't know. Yeah, must mean we are also good at it. Oops. Yeah, so anyways, like a moth to the flame. Like a moth to the flame. So, yeah. Option 2 is just always blame Trump, right? That's option 2 is blame Trump. Why don't the people just leave Gaza? The refugees? The Gazans? Why don't the Gazans leave Gaza? I think doesn't that get pretty close to satisfying an ethnic cleansing definition? Even if it's not genocide, it's a form of ethnic cleansing. If I was in a war zone and wasn't fighting in the war, I would just leave. Maybe. Just like everyone else, Yogi. Our evolutionary psychology doesn't, yeah. That's just an irrational statement, I think. Or you're saying something I don't know what it is. I don't know what it means. Yeah. No idea. What do you guys think? Did we successfully tackle the question of capitalism versus socialism? If I could just summarize a little bit, capitalism depends on ideas about human freedom, about society being about depending on this concept of settling disputes, looking for opportunities, and pursuing property. It may also depend on descriptions of humans as fundamentally innovative, fundamentally rational, fundamentally able to manage complexity, and maybe that ends at capitalism. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe you do have an ideology or political theory around that, but you don't have to. You can just justify capitalism with that as well. Capitalism also concomitantly emerged with ideas about trade and political economy. And so it's difficult to say, or maybe it's not, but it's difficult to say that, well, what people want to do in a society isn't based on aggregately what either the state or what society in general is doing at that time, what societies are able to do at that time, if you ask that question. And why? And then with socialism, you have thinkers like Marx or Gramsci who do have a metaphysics based on the sensing material reality. You're unapologetically human. You're also unapologetically in a material world, and you can't escape the machine or the system that you are looking at. You also have socialist ideas, less so communist ideas, coming from this idea of individual freedom, where you can say, well, there's nothing I can be except have a European identity, or there's nothing I can be except an American who wants to pursue the best opportunities possible. And because it is the case that I do want to pursue wealth, I have to be able to integrate all of my values, including natural values like freedom of movement and stuff, into this idea that I do have positive freedom, not just negative freedom. And then you've got thinkers in the middle like Rousseau, kind of split the difference and say, well, all you really have is how you describe freedom in society in the first place. Do with it what you want. Justice matters and comes first. It's not very irrational. People with pew-pews were fighting on the streets for months and a building was disappearing and there was no food, would you stay? Why? Why would you stay? Well, because if you're conditioned to see horrible things in the first place, and you're saying that, well, the actual large task is managing the day-to-day, what is the incentive to go move, especially if it's your homeland? Because you still have that idea that that's another form of ethnic cleansing, right? So you're talking about a rational decision. The rational decision is to solve the problem that's most pressing, the most pressing problem. So maybe you think I'm wrong. Once you've seen one building blow up, you've seen them all. You're desensitized to violence at that point in time. And so, yeah, this idea that, I am experiencing life and living as an individual in a war zone. And I'm also doing this as someone who has friends, family, history, tradition, all of these things, all of these forces, that even if I could leave, it's rational for me to stay. You're talking about me on my street right now. I don't know what that means. We're talking about you on your street right now. I don't know what that means. Why would you stay if you have the option to leave? Well, I probably would if I had a family and stuff. I might, but where would I go? How would I even make that's a big decision? You're asking it like both are small decisions. And so staying, maybe this is human irrationality in the first place, but that doesn't mean there's a simple rational solution. So I would appreciate I would like to be able to make that point that, yeah, it's maybe rational to leave if you can, but if the rationality of that decision is that I now have to judge what it's like when I leave and where I go, alongside this sort of idea or fact that, means you're constipated. Hey, what's up, Fart Nuggets? But I also have to weigh that I know sort of what I get if I stay away from the pew pew sounds. I don't know. What? Pretty simple. Why? Yeah, why? Yeah, I don't know if you're trolling, bro, but that seems like a very immature opinion. Bro or person, no offense. Yeah, thanks for everybody who came to hang out. And yeah, if anybody wants to like and subscribe, if you guys have anything else, I'm not like rushing off. I said I was going to do Palestine and Gaza another day, and I wanted to do this one instead first. So that's what I'm doing. And why stay in a war zone? Yeah, I don't even think it's just about defaulting, right? I think this is one of the problems. Okay, so this is one of the problems is that we think that our ability to categorize things and orient ourselves in space, right? So I'm here, I can make a decision. Like if I'm gonna say, well, this is the default choice, I can consider the default choice. Even reaching that point and describing what the default choice is based on instincts, it's based on complexity, it's based on what Kahneman calls system one thinking. It's a great example, by the way. It's a great example of system one and system two thinking. So if I deliberately say, well, there's more safety because there's a social safety net and a security system elsewhere, that already is saying, well, there's other stuff there too, but that's already saying that, well, the information that I'm using to form judgments about those things and what they imply that I now have to think about again, those are also based upon sort of system, these sort of like more intuitive or faster thinking processes and stuff. And so I think you're assuming way too much rationality, and then you're assuming that if you reach rationality, that decision is actually a clear description of causality in the world and explanations in the world. And I think more fundamentally, for me, more fundamentally, I think you're assuming that human values, like people who liked living in Gaza and Palestine, are also worth something. So I don't know if that's what you're reaching at. I don't know if that's what you're trying to ask me or that's what you're saying to me. You have two societies at war. You had, and I'm sure there's probably tons of victims in Palestine and Gaza. You also had Hamas being elected. You also had what seemed to be causes and not a total separation of militant groups. You had this what seemed to be idea of a society can all go to war. A society can all go to war, where you had something that was so nefarious and so unsupported, and yet they were able to do it anyways, which is a huge problem. The IDF should be responsible not to respond accordingly if that is the description that it was. Hey, I'm from the United States. I'm from the US. I'm from Arizona. Good to see you. War with itself. Socialism is leaning more to liberal. Hell yeah. Yeah, we talked about that a little bit. Yeah, Europe is a great example of a place where people wanted passports. People thought it might be cool to say, like, what is it like if there's a train that goes all the way from Northern Europe to Southern Europe? Doesn't it make sense? You know, don't you have to sort of talk about what it's like to get an apartment then anywhere in Europe? Like, that's very liberal. That's very liberal. You know. And so, yeah, Europe always did this, you know. Just like the United States, we have our problems. We've got problems with inequality. We've got problems with our economy and consumption. It's always going to be a struggle. Might be optimistic, but it's going to be a struggle. It's going to be a struggle. And so, with socialism and liberalism, you know, yeah. So while you have that struggle and stuff like that, you know, you also have really deep questions of individual values in society. Capitalism leans more towards tyranny. Yeah, so I wouldn't accept that one. I don't think it's because I'm biased, but that is literally what Mussolini said. Yeah, he said that, well, the best you know, if you get anything out of liberalism, what you get is violence. So that is what Mussolini said. It's not wrong because Mussolini said it, but it's also wrong because how do you explain, if you're not being ideological, if you're talking about knowledge, or a belief, well, can't I know that it's been the case that there's been capitalists that were philanthropists or that were just normal people? A lot of people. Aren't there a lot of, you know, even if 10% of small business owners are just, let's say you really hate capitalism, 90% of small business owners are jerks or assholes. They're schmucks. Total schmuck here. Well, if 10% are just normal, I might say capitalism leans more towards tyranny, but what does it mean? That doesn't mean anything. That's like the introduction to an essay or a Substack article. That's not actually knowledge. It doesn't explain anything or say anything. Both are dictatorships. That could be true. We could talk about that one sometime. I don't know if capitalism versus socialism day. Where's my mug? Who are you? I don't know if on capitalism versus socialism day, where's my mug and who are you? I don't know if I would cover both our dictatorships personally. Not to be too odd, but yeah, not to be too odd, but who knows? Be good. No. You get capitalism produces a movie like E.T. It produces the Transformers with Mark Wahlberg. Yeah, and so you have people doing more than just hunting and fishing and all this other stuff, and gathering and shaping themselves around the tribe so they can do those things. That sounds like a dictatorship more to me. More to me. And what are we doing today? You know, if I'm a caveman, what are we doing today? And all of nature at once responds, we're shaping ourselves to keep eating and hunting and sleeping and fishing and fucking. What are we doing today? We're shaping ourselves together to keep hunting and eating and fishing and resting, recovering, and stretching and relaxing and not relaxing, and all of these things as a tribe to all at once understand that we are shaping ourselves to do. So to me, that is a dictatorship. Not a dictatorship, not an actual dictatorship. You know, capitalism and socialism. I think in authoritarian states, or states that we call authoritarian, you know, oh, look at yourself. You know, I think in states where we see less liberal human rights, we don't see a definition or understanding of liberal human rights. You know, can you say capitalism and socialism is a dictatorship there? Yeah, because Kant sucked. Kant didn't really write about the international arena. John Rawls didn't at all. John Rawls said, fuck it, we're done. Because you have tangible examples of like, you know, Kissinger's foreign policy, foreign military policy, foreign policy, you know, whatever it actually is, colonialism. Yeah, really scary and weird stuff. Very scary and weird, always. So that's what I think about that. What do you think about that? Hopefully something. Franken beans, frickin' beans. Dictatorship. Round 2. Nuclear powers fight. Dictatorship. Round 2. All right. I'm taking off soon, guys. It's been a lot of fun. I ain't gonna be nobody's celebrity. Hey, what's up, Funky Fresh Beauty? You just caught the end of the stream. It was a good one, though. If you want to go back and watch any of it, I think some of this is watchable. But yeah, it's good to see you. I'll maybe do another mobile live tomorrow or something. Figure it out, or I'll just do another panel or something. And yeah, for now, I don't think I got anything else of value I can provide to anyone. What about this? What about this? Did you hear about the earthquake in Mother Russia? It made the top 10 ever recorded. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't, someone mentioned it. I didn't do the news story, or I didn't see the news story or anything yet, so. Sounded pretty nuts. Sounded cool. Cool in the sense that like it's geological, and yeah, so okay, cool. Where's the news story? I didn't see any news about it. I just saw there was going to be tsunami warnings all up the West Coast and the US, and I didn't see what Russia was getting back from it. Big displacement. You gotta do it, bro. Not that big of a displacement, but you gotta do it, so. Tsunami surface up. Yeah. That might be really disrespectful. We don't know how many people actually died there or whatever. But I will have to look for a news story and all that shit. So I'll see y'all later. If you guys want to like this stream and subscribe, I appreciate it. Catch another one. A lot of times we do more chill formats, not just like these sort of, whatever. We're a little dope in here. We got a cool chat and all that, but I can show you. You can get a little vibe on. Not only music, not only competing with each other, I want to go to a trendy bar and pick up some hot chicks and buff dudes, guys, for the little knocky. That's why I put on the kind of chill vibe music is, no offense, but like, buff dudes, hot chicks, all gotta eat, man. Me too, man. Me too. So that's how we vibe, guys. Let me just show you this. If you guys want to like and subscribe, we can do some debates. Sometimes we'll do other open panels and stuff too. Mostly it's just like chill, sort of chat, talk, that kind of stuff. Maybe we can see if we can get to 100,000 views just by putting music on, guys. You guys want to do that? I kind of want to do that. I don't really want to do that, but we could. See, the thing about the Trump Epstein files is that like Selena Gomez is coming in hot, guys, right? So nobody ever asks how like the Hollywood Illuminati elite are actually really impacting American politics. Can't we trim some of the fat out? No. Anyways, yeah, thanks everyone for hanging out. My name's Nathan. I go by Duck Online. I'm the host of Duck's Why. That's the channel. If you guys want to become a channel subscriber, I'd appreciate it. It's free. You can check me out if I pop into your algorithm that way. But yeah, we love doing shows like this. This was, almost 3 hours hanging out, talking, spending some time on stuff that I know. Helps us get a little deeper into issues like, well, what does the future look like? How do we describe the world around us? Can we be charitable and good faith and nice to each other and stuff? Can we just stop all the gosh darn dialogues and conversations about atheism and Christianity? Let's just do both at the same time, folks. Maybe not. I will sing you guys out with Sizzle Moon Song. That's the last chat I see on my side of the studio. Have a good night, ducks. Tsunami, surf is up. Have a good night, ducks. Tsunami, surf is up. Have a good night, ducks. Tsunami, surf is up. And have a good night, ducks. Tsunami, surf is up.